There I was, gripping the hospital bed rails in the midst of contractions while watching Noah rush out the door, his emergency work meeting, apparently more important than the birth of our daughter. Little did I know that 6 months later I'd be standing in front of another woman's house, identical wedding ring on her finger, a 3-year-old boy with Noah's eyes playing in the yard, and my finger hovering over the call button that would shatter 3 lives but finally set mine free. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The irony isn't lost on me that I met Noah Bennett during the happiest period of my professional life. I'd just made partner at Luminous Marketing, the youngest woman to do so in the firm's 30-year history. My campaign for Everglow Cosmetics had gone viral, increasing their sales by 68% and earning us industry awards that typically went to the bigger agencies in New York or Los Angeles. Our Denver office was small but mighty, and I was its rising star. Emma Hudson has the golden touch, my boss would say during client pitches, and I believed it too. At 32, I had the career I'd dreamed of since college: creative, challenging, and recognized. My loft apartment downtown offered sunrise views of the mountains, and though my fridge contained little more than sparkling water and takeout containers, I was content. Then came the Horizon Hotels account, a boutique chain expanding. Across the western states needed a complete rebrand, and they'd narrowed their choice to us and a competitor. The final presentations were scheduled at their headquarters in Salt Lake City, and our team arrived early to prepare. Their marketing director is notoriously difficult, my colleague Daphne warned as we set up in the conference room. He's rejected 3 agencies already. I arranged my presentation boards with steady hands. Then he hasn't met us yet. When Noah walked into the room, his presence was understated but undeniable. Tall, with thoughtful brown eyes and a quiet confidence, he asked questions that cut straight to the heart of our strategy. While other executives focused on metrics and cost, he wanted to know the story we were telling about their hotels, what feelings we hoped to evoke, what promises we were making to their guests. Marketing isn't just about visibility, he said. During our discussion, it's about values. Are you showing people who they could be when they stay with us? I found myself engaging with him on a level that transcended the typical client meeting. We talked about authenticity in advertising, about creating campaigns that respected people's intelligence. When I referenced an obscure book on behavioral economics that had influenced my approach, his eyes lit up. You've read Kahneman? Most marketers quote it without understanding it. I don't just quote it, I countered. I apply it. The presentation went brilliantly. Our team was buzzing with excitement as we packed up, fairly certain we'd secured the account. As everyone filtered out, Noah lingered. Your approach was different, he said. Everyone else showed us how they'd make us look good. You showed us how to be better. Something in his voice made me look up from my portfolio. Our eyes met, and there was a current of recognition. Not just professional respect, but something more personal. Would you have dinner with me tonight? He asked. To discuss the campaign further, of course. I should have maintained professional boundaries. I should have suggested a lunch with the whole team instead. But there was an earnestness to him that was refreshing in an industry built on carefully constructed images. I'd like that, I said. Dinner extended into a walk through downtown Salt Lake City, the conversation flowing from marketing strategies to our backgrounds, aspirations, and values. Noah told me about growing up in Seattle with parents who emphasized integrity above achievement. How he'd worked his way through business school rather than taking the easy path his more privileged classmates chose. Success without substance isn't success at all, he said. That's why I pushed back against the other agencies. They wanted to make us look exclusive, aspirational, but in that hollow way that preys on people's insecurities. I found myself telling him things I rarely shared, about my parents' divorce when I was 12, how it made me value honesty above all else, about my ambitions beyond marketing, my dream of eventually teaching at university level, helping to shape a more ethical approach to advertising. By the time he walked me back to my hotel, something had shifted between us. This wasn't just professional chemistry or casual attraction. It felt like finding a person whose wavelength matched my own in a world of static. "I'm going to be in Denver next month," he said, "for the contract signing, if you win the account." "When we win the account," I corrected with a smile. His hand brushed mine. "Either way, I'd like to see you again." 2 days later, we got the news. Luminous had won the Horizon Hotels account. My colleagues credited my presentation, and professionally, I was elated. Personally, I was counting the days until Noah's Denver visit. Our relationship developed with an intensity that would have alarmed me in any other context. Noah traveled to Denver every few weeks for the campaign rollout, and each visit deepened our connection. After 3 months, he confessed he was applying for positions in Denver-based companies. "This distance is becoming unsustainable," he said over dinner at my favorite Italian restaurant. "Not just logistically, but emotionally. I think about you constantly, Emma. When I'm reviewing designs, I wonder what insights you'd offer. When I find a new coffee shop, I imagine us there together." By the 6-month mark, he'd secured a position as creative director at a Denver media company. He found an apartment 10 minutes from mine, and our lives began to intertwine. Noah was different. From men I'd dated before, attentive without being possessive, ambitious without being self-centered. He remembered details about my childhood, asked questions about my day, and genuinely listened to the answers. He brought thoughtful gifts, a first edition of my favorite novel, art supplies when I mentioned wanting to try painting again. "I've never felt so seen by someone," I told Daphne over lunch one day. She seemed hesitant. "It's moving very fast, Emma." "When it's right, you know it," I replied, recognizing even as I said it how cliched it sounded. "Just make sure you really do know him," she cautioned. "People are complex." I dismissed her concern as the natural skepticism of someone who'd experienced more relationship disappointments than I had. Noah and I continued our whirlwind romance, and after a year together, he proposed during a weekend trip to the mountains. The ring was vintage, an oval sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. "It reminded me of your eyes," he said as he slipped it onto my finger. "Bright, unique, with depth that reveals itself slowly." We married 6 months later in a small ceremony by a mountain lake. My parents, long divorced but amicable, both attended. Noah's parents couldn't travel due to his father's health issues, he explained, but sent a heartfelt letter I read with tears in my eyes. Our first year of marriage was blissful. We moved into a craftsman-style house in one of Denver's historic neighborhoods, combining our design aesthetics into a home that felt like a perfect representation of our union. Noah thrived in his new position, while I continued to bring in major accounts for Luminous. When I discovered I was pregnant, it felt like the natural next chapter in our story. Noah's reaction was everything I'd hoped for: joy, excitement, and a deepening tenderness toward me. He attended every doctor's appointment, helped design the nursery, and read parenting books with the same focus he gave to professional projects. "Our daughter is going to have the most devoted father," my mother said during her visit to help us prepare for the baby. "The way Noah looks at you, Emma, like you're carrying all the treasure in the world." As my pregnancy progressed, I noticed subtle changes in Noah's schedule. More late meetings, occasional weekend work sessions, business trips that seemed to appear on his calendar with little warning. Nothing alarming. We were both ambitious professionals, after all. But new patterns emerging in our previously synchronized lives. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "The media landscape is changing," he explained when I mentioned it. We're pitching bigger clients, expanding our digital footprint. It's temporarily chaotic, but it will settle once these new accounts are established. I believed him completely. Why wouldn't I? He was still attentive when home, still enthusiastic about our baby's imminent arrival, still the man who looked at me like I was his world. The occasional missed dinner or weekend call seemed like a small price to pay for our growing family's security. Then came October 3rd, the day that would ultimately split my life into before and after. My water broke 3 weeks early while I was working from home on a presentation. Noah was at a meeting across town but promised to meet me at the hospital immediately. "Don't move," he said, voice tense with excitement. "I'm on my way. Our daughter is coming, Emma." I took an Uber to the hospital, certain Noah would arrive any minute. The contractions intensified as the hours passed, with no sign of him. His texts came sporadically, stuck in traffic, just parking, almost there. Until finally, 5 hours into my labor, he appeared, breathless and apologetic. "Emergency at work," he explained, kissing my forehead. "The server crashed during a client presentation. I couldn't leave until it was resolved." Something in his explanation felt off, but I was in the middle of a contraction and couldn't focus on anything but the pain. His shirt smelled faintly of unfamiliar perfume, floral, with vanilla notes. Nothing like the clean citrus scent I used. Before I could question it, another contraction hit, and the moment passed. Noah stayed through the next 4 hours of labor, holding my hand, encouraging me through each push. Then his phone rang. He checked the screen, and I saw a flicker of panic cross his face. "I have to take this," he said. "It's the CEO. The server issue might have compromised client data. I'll be right back." He stepped out during what the nurse called the transition phase, the most intense part of labor. 10 minutes passed, 20, 30. The doctor arrived, concerned about the baby's decreasing heart rate. Decisions needed to be made quickly about possible interventions. "Where's your husband?" the nurse asked as I gripped the bed rails through another contraction. "Working," I managed to gasp, tears streaming down my face, from pain, fear, and a growing sense of abandonment. I called his cell repeatedly. No answer. I texted, "Noah, please come back. They're talking about emergency measures. I need you here." Nothing. Lily Bennett was born at 11:42 p.m. after a difficult delivery that required vacuum assistance. She was perfect, 6 pounds, 3 ounces, with a dusting of dark hair and eyes that would later reveal themselves to be her father's warm brown. But Noah wasn't there to see it. He returned 2 hours later, his eyes red-rimmed, claiming the data breach had been worse than anticipated. "I had to help implement emergency protocols," he said, cradling Lily with tears in his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I'll never forgive myself for missing this." Exhausted and overwhelmed by new motherhood, I accepted his explanation. The next few days in the hospital, he was the model of devotion, barely leaving our side, handling Lily, with natural ease bringing me my favorite foods and comfortable clothes from home. But something had shifted. A tiny seed of doubt had been planted, and in the months to come it would grow into a truth too monstrous to ignore. Bringing Lily home changed everything. The perfect house Noah and I had lovingly decorated now felt like a stage set, beautiful but somehow hollow. The nursery with its hand-painted constellations on the ceiling, Noah's weekend project, and carefully selected sustainable furniture suddenly seemed like compensation for something I couldn't yet name. The first month passed in a blur of sleepless nights and adjusting to motherhood. Noah took 2 weeks of paternity leave, during which he was attentive, handling midnight feedings and diaper changes with surprising competence for a first-time father. When I mentioned this, he shrugged and said, "I've been reading the books, Emma. I want to be good at this." But when he returned to work, the subtle changes I'd noticed during my pregnancy intensified. The late meetings became more Frequent. The weekend work sessions stretched longer. His phone would ring and he'd step outside to take the call, returning with vague explanations about client emergencies or team issues. I don't understand why the CEO needs you specifically at 8 p.m. on a Saturday, I said one evening as Noah hurriedly changed from the sweatpants and t-shirt he'd worn all day into a crisp button-down and slacks. The Westridge campaign is launching Monday, he explained, not quite meeting my eyes. We're having rendering issues with the digital assets. Can't the technical team handle that? They need creative direction. He kissed my forehead. Then Lily's. I shouldn't be more than a couple of hours. He returned after midnight, smelling faintly of wine and that same unfamiliar perfume I'd noticed at the hospital. When I mentioned it the next morning, his explanation came too quickly. We ordered dinner at the office. Vanessa from accounts spilled her drink, reaching across the table. I helped her clean it up. The explanation was plausible. So was the receipt for Indian takeout he showed me from his wallet. Yet something felt rehearsed about the whole exchange, as though he'd anticipated my question and prepared his response. As my maternity leave neared its end, another pattern emerged. Noah began suggesting I extend my time at home with Lily. You don't have to rush back, he said one evening as I reviewed work emails. We're managing financially. Lily needs her mother. Coming from a man who had always championed my career, who had boasted to friends about having a powerhouse wife, this traditional sentiment jarred me. I thought we agreed on equal parenting, I said. My career matters too. Of course it does, he backpedaled. I just worry about your stress levels if you go back too soon. I returned to work part-time when Lily was 4 months old, grateful. For Luminous Marketing's flexible policies for new parents, Noah's reaction was mixed, supportive in words, but creating logistical complications. Suddenly, his schedule became even more unpredictable, making childcare coordination a nightmare. I thought your team meetings were on Tuesdays, I said one Wednesday when he texted that he'd be late again. They moved it, he replied. Client request. These inconsistencies accumulated like snow on a roof, each flake insignificant until the weight threatens collapse. I found myself keeping a mental tally of discrepancies, then feeling guilty for my suspicion. Was this what motherhood did? Create paranoia where there was only overwork? Daphne noticed the change in me during a team lunch. You seem distracted, she said as I checked my phone for the third time. Is Lily okay? She's fine. It's just... I hesitated, reluctant to voice my concerns aloud. Noah's been acting strange, working late constantly, taking calls in private, coming home smelling like someone else's perfume. Saying it out loud made it sound exactly like what I feared it was. Daphne's expression softened. Have you asked him directly? He always has an explanation, a plausible one. Trust your instincts, Emma. You've always had good ones. That night, I tried a different approach. Noah, are you happy with us? With our family? He looked genuinely surprised. Of course I am. Why would you ask that? You're barely home. When you are, you're distracted. It feels like you're pulling away. He set down his phone and took my hands. I'm sorry. Work has been demanding. But that's temporary. This project will wrap up soon, and things will settle down. I promise. His eyes held mine steadily, and I wanted desperately to believe him. The alternative was too painful to consider. 2 weeks later, Lily developed a high fever, 103. 4 degrees at 7 p.m. Noah was at another emergency meeting. I called him repeatedly while juggling a screaming baby and the pediatrician's after-hours line. When he finally answered, the background noise told its own story. Clinking glasses, ambient music, multiple conversations. Are you at a restaurant? I asked, Lily wailing against my shoulder. What? No. We ordered in. The team is... Lily has a fever of 103. The doctor says we need to take her to the emergency room. I'm on my way, he said immediately, and I heard the background noise fade as if he'd moved to a quieter area. 20 minutes, tops. He arrived 40 minutes later, breathless and apologetic. Traffic was a nightmare. How is she? We spent the night in the pediatric ER, where Lily was diagnosed with her first ear infection. Throughout the ordeal, Noah was the picture of a concerned father, but something had broken in me. The restaurant noises, the delay in his arrival, the lingering scent of that perfume again. It all pointed to a reality I'd been avoiding. The next day, while Noah was at work and Lily napped, I did something I'd never imagined myself doing. I checked his credit card statements online. There it was, a pattern hidden in plain sight. Regular charges at a restaurant called Bordeaux, never mentioned in his accounts of working late. Hotel parking charges downtown, miles from his office. A jewelry purchase from Tiffany's 2 weeks before with no corresponding gift received by me. My hands shook as I scrolled through months of financial infidelity. This was the foundation on which our family life now rested. A structure of lies so carefully maintained that I doubted my own perceptions rather than see the truth. That evening, Noah came home with flowers and Lily's favorite stuffed animal. "How's my brave girl?" he asked, lifting her carefully. "Daddy missed you today?" I watched them together, his tenderness genuine, his concern real, and felt the cognitive dissonance like physical pain. How could he love her so clearly while betraying us so completely? After Lily was asleep, I considered confronting him with what I'd found. But some instinct held me back. If he could maintain this elaborate deception for months, what else might he be hiding? What would he do if cornered? Instead, I said, "I was thinking of taking Lily to visit my mom this weekend. Give you some space to catch up on work without us underfoot." The flash of relief on his face was unmistakable. "That's thoughtful of you. It has been intense lately." "We'll leave Friday morning, return Sunday evening." "Perfect timing," he said. "I have a presentation to finalize for Monday anyway." As he kissed me goodnight, I felt a strange calm descend. The anxiety of suspicion had been replaced by the certainty of betrayal. Now I needed to discover the full extent of his deception before deciding what came next. What I couldn't have anticipated was that my weekend away would reveal not just an affair, but an entire parallel life, one that made his abandonment during Lily's birth suddenly, horrifyingly clear. The drive to my mother's house in Boulder usually felt like a retreat. The gradual shift from urban landscape to mountain views typically calmed me. But that Friday morning, with Lily babbling in her car seat and a weekend of deception ahead, each mile heightened my sense of unreality. I'd told my mother we were coming for a simple visit. I couldn't bear to voice my suspicions aloud. Speaking them would make them real, would transform me from Noah Bennett's wife into a woman being betrayed. So I plastered on a smile when she greeted us, laughing as she immediately swept Lily into her arms and covered her with kisses. "There's my beautiful granddaughter. Did you miss your Grandma Diane? I think you grew since last month." My mother's home hadn't changed since my childhood. The same comfortable furniture, walls covered with family photos, shelves lined with books. The stability of it all struck me with unexpected force. While my carefully constructed life was fracturing, this place remained solid, unchanging. "You look tired, honey," Mom said after Lily was down for her nap. "More than new mother tired. Is everything okay?" For a moment, I considered unburdening myself, telling her about the credit card statements, the mysterious absences, the perfume, but I wasn't ready to make it real, not yet. "Just work stress," I lied. "The transition back has been harder than I expected." She studied me with the penetrating gaze that had seen through childhood fibs about homework and teenage excuses, about missed curfews, but mercifully didn't press. "Well, I'm here all weekend. Why don't you take some time for yourself? Go for a hike, visit that bookstore you love. Lily and I will be fine." The suggestion gave me an unexpected opening. Actually, I was thinking of driving down to Denver tomorrow. Do some shopping, maybe get a massage. Perfect idea, she agreed. Take the whole day. You deserve it. That night, I lay awake in my childhood bedroom, Lily's portable crib beside me, watching her perfect little chest rise and fall. How had it come to this? Planning to spy on my husband while using my mother as unwitting childcare? What had happened to the transparent, honest relationship Noah and I had prided ourselves on? I picked up my phone and opened our text thread. The screen filled with messages about logistics, schedule coordination, brief endearments that now felt hollow. I scrolled back further before Lily's birth, searching for the moment when things had changed. But there was no clear dividing line, just a gradual shift I'd been too preoccupied to notice. I put the phone down and gazed at the ceiling, where glow-in-the-dark stars I'd placed as a teenager still faintly shone. The cosmic irony wasn't lost on me, lying under artificial stars while my husband painted real ones on our daughter's ceiling, both of us creating illusions of permanence in a universe of constant change. The next morning, I dressed in clothes. That suggested casual shopping, jeans, comfortable flats, a light sweater. Nothing that hinted at surveillance. I kissed Lily's forehead as she played on my mother's lap. "Have fun," Mom called as I left. "Don't rush back. We're going to make cookies, aren't we, little one?" The drive back to Denver gave me time to question what I was doing. Was I overreacting, creating catastrophes from coincidences? But then I'd remember the restaurant noises while Lily burned with fever, the hotel parking charges, the jewelry purchase, and resolve would harden again. I parked a block from our house at 10:30 a.m. Noah's car was gone, as expected. He'd mentioned working at the office this weekend. I wasn't entirely sure what I was looking for, but some instinct told me to start at home. The house was quiet, pristine, exactly as I'd left it. I moved through the rooms, searching for something, anything that might confirm or deny my suspicions. His home office revealed nothing unusual. His dresser drawers contained the same neatly folded clothes. The bathroom cabinet held his razor, cologne, deodorant. I felt simultaneously relieved and foolish. What had I expected to find? Love letters? Another woman's clothing? Then I noticed his passport was missing from the desk drawer where we kept our important documents. Noah hadn't mentioned any international travel. In fact, he'd specifically said he'd be working on a local campaign for Westridge hotels. I checked the spare key hook in the kitchen. The key to his mother's condo was missing too. The place she'd left him when she moved to Arizona for retirement 3 years ago. Noah had kept it as an investment property, occasionally renting it to vetted colleagues or friends visiting Denver. We'd discussed selling it multiple times, but never quite got around to it. Acting on instinct, I drove to the condo building in Cherry Creek, an upscale neighborhood 15 minutes from our house. I still had my own key, rarely used but always on my keychain. Noah had once joked it was in case I ever needed a secret getaway from motherhood. The irony of that comment wasn't lost on me now as I entered the building lobby. A young woman was checking her mail by the bank of mailboxes. "Good morning," she said pleasantly. "Are you here to visit someone?" "Actually, I own Unit 307. I replied. "My husband and I." "Bennett?" Her expression brightened. "Oh, you must be Rachel. I've seen your husband and your son many times, but we haven't met. I'm Caitlin from 311. The words hit like a physical blow. Rachel, your son. I somehow managed a smile. "Yes, that's me. Nice to finally meet you. Your little boy is adorable," she continued, oblivious to my shock. "Those curls. And so well-behaved for a 3-year-old. "Thank you," I murmured, feeling disconnected from my body. "We think he's pretty special." She waved goodbye, and I stood, frozen by the mailboxes, unable to process what I'd just learned. Noah didn't have an affair. He had another family, a son. A woman named Rachel, who everyone thought was his wife. I don't remember walking to the elevator or riding to the third floor. The next clear memory is standing outside Unit 307, key in, hand, heart hammering so loudly I was certain it could be heard through the door. I hesitated, suddenly uncertain. What would I find inside? What if they were there? But no. Noah's car wasn't in the building garage, and this Rachel clearly thought I was her, which meant she wasn't home either. I unlocked the door and stepped into a parallel universe. The condo was fully furnished, lived in, not a rental, not an occasional crash pad, a home. Family photos lined the entryway wall, Noah with a pretty brunette woman, both beaming at the camera, Noah holding a newborn. The three of them at what appeared to be the baby's first birthday, then second, then third. A beautiful little boy with Noah's eyes and curly dark hair. I moved through the space in a daze. The kitchen contained a sippy cup in the dish rack, dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets in the freezer. The living room had toys neatly organized in colorful bins. A bookshelf held parenting books and family photo albums. In the master bedroom, I found her clothes hanging beside his in the closet, her toiletries arranged neatly on the bathroom counter. On the nightstand, a framed photo of Noah kissing her cheek, an engagement ring prominently displayed on her left hand. I picked it up, studied the woman who believed she was Noah's only wife. She was younger than me by perhaps 5 years. Pretty, in a wholesome way, with warm eyes and an open smile. I felt no anger toward her, only a devastating kinship. We were both victims of an elaborate deception. The second bedroom had been converted to a child's room, with a race car bed and walls, painted with a transportation theme. Trains, planes, cars, and boats moved along a painted track that circled the room. A name was stenciled above the bed. Ethan. My legs gave out then. I sank to the floor beside this unknown child's bed, this half-brother to my daughter, and finally, allowed the tears to come. Not delicate, dignified tears, but raw, ugly sobs that racked my body and left me gasping for air. How long had this been going on? The boy was 3, which meant Noah had established this family before he even met me. Had I been the affair? Or was I just the next chapter in a pattern of parallel lives? My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from my mother sending a photo of Lily covered in cookie dough, her smile wide and gummy. The sight of her innocent face broke something open inside me. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about my daughter's future, her security, her understanding of family and trust. I wiped my eyes and forced myself to think clearly. I needed evidence. Carefully, methodically, I moved through the condo, taking photos of everything, the family pictures, the closet with his clothes, the drawers containing his things, mail addressed to both of them. I found their wedding photo, dated 3 years before Noah supposedly met me. A Father's Day card from Ethan with Noah's name clearly written on the envelope. In the desk drawer, I discovered the ultimate confirmation, a life insurance policy, naming Rachel Bennett and Ethan Bennett as beneficiaries, a second mortgage statement in both their names, tax returns filed jointly. I documented it all, creating an irrefutable record of Noah's double life. Then, as I prepared to leave, I noticed a wall calendar in the kitchen. A date next week was circled in red. Ours birthday dinner, 7 p.m., Bordeaux. The same restaurant? That appeared repeatedly on Noah's credit card statements. The missing pieces clicked into place. The absences, the late nights, the missed family events. He wasn't juggling work and home. He was juggling 2 complete families. I left the condo, exactly as I'd found it, and walked to my car in a state of eerie calm. The initial shock had crystallized into something harder, colder. I drove back to Boulder with the windows down, letting the wind whip through the car, as if it could somehow cleanse me of this knowledge. When I arrived at my mother's house, Lily was napping. Mom took one look at my face and pulled me into, her arms without a word. And there, in the safety of maternal embrace, I finally found my voice. Noah has another family, I said. Another wife, another child. I need to decide what to do. My mother, to her eternal credit, didn't gasp or cry out. She simply held me tighter and said, "Then that's what we'll do. Decide." My mother's kitchen table had witnessed many pivotal moments in my life: college applications, wedding planning, baby shower preparations. Now it served as war room and sanctuary as we strategized my next steps. "You have two options," Mom said, pouring more coffee into my mug. "Confront him immediately or build your case first." I scrolled through the photos I'd taken at the condo, each one a piece of evidence in the collapse of my marriage. If I confront him now, he'll just create another plausible explanation. It's what he does. He'll say he's helping a friend, or it's a complicated work situation. Emma, there were family photos, a child who calls him daddy, another woman wearing a wedding ring identical to yours. There's no explanation for that. You don't understand how convincing he can be. I set my phone down, the images too painful to keep viewing. I need to be methodical about this. I need to understand the full scope before I make any moves. Lily babbled from her high chair, happily mashing banana between her fingers. I watched her, my chest tight with a mother's fierce protectiveness. She deserved better than this chaos, better than a father who divided his attention between two families like some modern-day bigamist. "I need a lawyer," I said finally. "Before I confront Noah, before I do anything, I need to understand my legal position." Mom nodded. "Dorothy's daughter is a family attorney. I can call her." "No, someone Noah doesn't know through any connection. Someone completely outside our social circle." The rest of the weekend passed in a strange limbo. I played with Lily, helped my mother in her garden, and carried on surface-level text conversations with Noah about his work project and our visit to Boulder. Each message from him now read like communication from a stranger, familiar words from an unfamiliar person. On Sunday evening, we returned home. Noah greeted us with embraces and gifts, a stuffed elephant for Lily, artisanal chocolates for me. I accepted them with a smile that felt stretched across my face like plastic wrap, tight and unnatural. "How was your weekend?" I asked, watching him for tells, for glimpses of the deception I now knew underlay every interaction. "Productive, but exhausting." He set Lily's diaper bag down in the nursery. "The Westridge presentation is ready for tomorrow. How was your mother?" "The same. She spoiled Lily rotten." I kept my voice light, conversational. "Did you miss us?" "Every minute." He kissed my forehead, and I forced myself not to recoil. "The house is too quiet without you two." I wanted to scream, to demand answers about Rachel and Ethan, to throw his duplicity in his face. But the lawyer's voice echoed in my mind from our morning consultation. "Information is power. The more you know before he knows you know, the better. Position you'll be in." Monday morning, Noah left for work with his usual rushed goodbye. As soon as his car disappeared down the street, I began my methodical investigation. I'd taken the day off, arranged for Lily to stay with her regular sitter, and prepared a list of what I needed to uncover. My first call was to a private investigator, recommended by the attorney. Catherine Price had a no-nonsense voice and a direct approach that I immediately appreciated. "How long has the deception been going on?" she asked after I explained the situation. "At least 4 years. The other child is 3, and there were wedding photos dated a year before that." "And you've been together how long?" 3 years. Married for 2. Her silence spoke volumes. We both knew what that meant. I was the second relationship. The other woman in this scenario, though neither of us had known it. "I'll need access to financial records, his schedule, any documentation you've already gathered," she said. And Mrs. Bennet? Prepare yourself. In cases like this, what you've discovered is usually just the surface. Her words proved prophetic. Over the next 2 weeks, while maintaining the excruciating facade of normal family life with Noah, I watched. Catherine's reports reveal the architecture of his deception. Noah Bennett was not even his real name. He was Nicholas Barrett, born in Seattle as he'd claimed, but with a history he'd carefully obscured. His work trips rotated between actual business travel and time with his other family. The media company he supposedly worked for existed, but he wasn't the creative director. He was a mid-level manager who'd negotiated a flexible remote work arrangement. Most devastating of all was the timeline Catherine constructed. Noah, Nicholas, had been married to Rachel for 5 years when he met me. Their son Ethan was just a baby. Instead of divorcing or coming clean, he'd created an elaborate, compartmentalized life, using his remote work flexibility to maintain both relationships. The night he'd abandoned me during labor, Ethan had been hospitalized with an asthma attack. The choice Noah had made in that moment, which family needed him more, suddenly made horrific sense. How does someone live like this? I asked Catherine, during our update meeting at a cafe far from my usual haunts. The constant lies, the scheduling, the stress of being caught. Some people compartmentalize extremely well, she replied, sliding a folder toward me. And your husband appears to be exceptional at it. He has separate phones, email accounts, even different credit cards for each life. He's maintained this for years without either family becoming suspicious. I opened the folder to find surveillance. Photos of Noah with Rachel and Ethan at a park. Noah picking up his son from daycare. Noah kissing Rachel goodbye outside their condo. Each image burned into my retinas. Undeniable evidence of a life parallel to mine. What's my legal recourse? I asked, closing the folder. That's complicated. Technically, your marriage may be invalid since he was already married, which makes him guilty of bigamy, a Class 6 felony in Colorado. But prosecuting would be messy, public, and traumatic for both children involved. Catherine leaned forward. What do you want out of this, Emma? Revenge? Financial security? A clean break? Her question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on uncovering the truth that I hadn't fully processed what I wanted to happen next. Revenge felt justified, but hollow. Financial security was essential, particularly for Lily. But beyond those immediate concerns, what did I truly want? I want my dignity, I said finally. I want him to face consequences, but not at the expense of the children, and I paused, articulating the thought for the first time. I want the other woman, Rachel, to know the truth. She deserves that same dignity of choice. Catherine nodded. Then that's our framework moving forward. That evening, I met with Caroline Winters, the attorney I'd consulted. Unlike Catherine's minimalist office, Caroline's space was warm, with comfortable chairs and subtle lighting that made it feel more like a living room than a legal practice. Catherine's report is thorough, she said, closing the file. You have multiple options here, Emma. We could pursue criminal charges for bigamy, though that's rare. We could file for divorce and seek substantial financial compensation for fraud. Or we could approach this more creatively. Creatively? Caroline leaned back in her chair. Your husband has built his life on deception. His power comes from controlling information. Who knows what, when they know it, how they find out. What if we shift that power dynamic? A plan began to take shape between us, not centered on revenge or public humiliation, but on controlled revelation and consequences proportional to the betrayal. The first step, Caroline advised, is securing your financial position. I've prepared paperwork for you to sign that will protect your assets and credit immediately. I signed where indicated, feeling a strange sense of calm. After weeks of emotional turmoil, taking concrete action felt stabilizing. Next, she continued, We need to document everything in your home. Possessions, valuables, items with sentimental value before confrontation. Once he knows you've discovered his deception, all bets are off regarding his behavior. You think he might try to take things? I think a man who's maintained two separate families for years is capable of significant self-preservation instincts. Let's not underestimate him. I nodded, remembering Noah's practiced explanations, his carefully constructed alibis, his seamless transitions between his dual lives. What about Rachel? I asked. When do we tell her? Caroline considered this. That's the most delicate part. Ideally, you'd both confront him together, presenting a united front he can't manipulate or divide. But approaching her requires careful planning. She'll be experiencing the same shock and betrayal you did. I want to meet her first, I said, the idea crystallizing as I spoke. Woman to woman, without him present. She deserves to hear it from someone who understands exactly what she's going through. As I drove home that evening, a strange sense of purpose replaced the hollow ache that had dominated the past weeks. Noah had shattered my trust, upended my life, and jeopardized my daughter's future. But in doing so, he'd also freed me from illusions. The Emma who'd believed in perfect romance, who'd accepted explanations that contradicted her instincts, who'd prioritized a partner's approval over her own perception. That Emma was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, clearer-eyed, and ready to forge a new path, not defined by victimhood or vengeance, but by deliberate choices and reclaimed agency. That night, I watched Noah play with Lily, his face animated with genuine love. The cognitive dissonance was still jarring. How could he love her so completely while systematically betraying her mother? How could he build childhood memories with her while simultaneously doing the same with Ethan? The answer wasn't that his love was fake. The devastating truth was that it was real, and still insufficient to prevent him from living a life of calculated deception. As I prepared for bed, Noah wrapped his arms around me from behind, kissing my neck in a familiar gesture that once brought comfort but now made my skin crawl. I've been thinking, he murmured. We should take a family vacation soon. Maybe that beach resort in San Diego we talked about? I turned in his arms, studying the face I'd once trusted implicitly. That sounds perfect, I replied, matching his tone of casual intimacy. Let's check our calendars tomorrow. He smiled, oblivious to the fact that his carefully constructed house of cards was days away from collapse. I love you, Emma. I know, I said, the words technically true, but carrying a weight of meaning he couldn't begin to understand. As Noah fell asleep beside me, I finalized my plan. I would meet Rachel. We would compare notes. And then together, we would make one phone call that would change everything. Meeting your husband's other wife requires careful planning. I chose Wednesday for our encounter, knowing Noah had a monthly executive meeting that reliably kept him occupied until evening. The location took more consideration. It needed to be private but neutral, comfortable but not intimate. Eventually, I settled on a private room at a tea room in a neighborhood far from both our homes. Catherine had confirmed Rachel's schedule. She worked part-time as a pediatric nurse, with Wednesdays off. Ethan attended a preschool program until 2 p.m. I made the reservation for 2:30, giving her time to pick up her son and drop him with a sitter. Are you sure you want to do this alone? Caroline asked during our final strategy session. I could accompany you, or Catherine. I shook my head. She'll be defensive enough facing a stranger with this information. Having my lawyer or investigator, there would make it feel like an ambush. The night before, I barely slept. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would present the evidence, how I would respond to her inevitable disbelief and anger. Would she shoot the messenger? Would she think I was delusional? Or worse, would she already know about me, making me the fool once again? By morning, dark circles shadowed my eyes. I dressed carefully in a professional but approachable outfit, navy, trousers, a soft gray sweater, minimal jewelry. Nothing that suggested wealth or competition. I arranged for my mother to watch Lily, unable to focus on both the confrontation and childcare. Be gentle with her, Mom advised as I prepared to leave. Remember, she's as much a victim as you are. The tea room was exactly what I needed. Private seating areas separated by delicate folding screens, soft classical music masking conversations, impeccable service that emphasized discretion. I arrived 30 minutes early, setting up the small, leather portfolio containing copies of the evidence, photos, timeline, financial records. Enough to be convincing without being overwhelming. At precisely 2:30, the hostess approached. "Ms. Hudson? Your guest has arrived." Rachel Barrett was prettier in person than in photographs. She wore scrubs with cartoon characters, suggesting she'd come directly from work, and her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked younger, more vulnerable than I'd imagined, and a wave of unexpected empathy washed over me. "Hi, I'm Emma," I said, extending my hand. "Thank you for coming." She shook it tentatively. "Rachel, though I'm not sure why I'm here, your message was intriguing." I'd contacted her through a carefully worded email to her work address, suggesting a professional connection through Noah's company that needed discreet discussion. Not entirely honest, but necessary to secure the meeting. "Please sit," I gestured to the chair across from me. "Would you like some tea?" "I'd prefer if you told me what this is about," she said, though she did sit. "Are you a client of Nick's?" Nick, not Noah. Another small detail in the tapestry of lies. No, I'm not a client. I took a deep breath. This is going to be difficult to hear, and I want you to know that I'm not here to hurt you. Quite the opposite. Her expression shifted from polite confusion to wariness. "What exactly is this about?" There was no gentle way to say it. "I'm married to the same man you are. He's living two completely separate lives with two different families." Rachel's face remained perfectly still, but her hands, which had been resting on the table, curled into tight fists. "If this is some kind of joke—" "It's not," I said softly, opening the portfolio. "His name is Nicholas Barrett with you. With me, he's Noah Bennett. We have a 6-month-old daughter named Lily. We live in Washington Park. He tells me he's the creative director at Meridian Media, though I've recently learned that's not his actual position." Her eyes darted to the documents I'd laid out. Photographs of Noah and me on our wedding day, our mortgage statement, Lily's birth certificate with his name listed as father. "This is impossible," she whispered. But there was a tremor in her voice that suggested she wasn't entirely convinced of that. "I wish it were." I slid a photo toward her, Noah holding Lily in the hospital. This was taken the day after he abandoned me during labor, claiming a work emergency. I later discovered the emergency was that Ethan had been hospitalized with an asthma attack. At the mention of her son's name, Rachel's head snapped up, eyes widening. "How do you know about Ethan?" "I know a lot of things, Rachel. I know you live in the Cherry Creek condo that Noah told me was an investment property. I know you celebrate your birthday next week at Bordeaux Restaurant. I know you met him 5 years ago when he was a patient at the pediatric clinic where you work. He had brought in his nephew for an ear infection." With each detail, her face grew paler. She reached into her purse with trembling hands and pulled out her phone. I watched as she navigated to her photos and wordlessly turned the screen toward me. It showed the 3 of them, Rachel, Nicholas, Noah, and a curly-haired little boy, smiling in front of a Christmas tree. The same tree, I realized with a jolt, that was in the background of photos Noah had sent me while supposedly on a business trip to Chicago. "When was this taken?" I asked. "December, the 23rd. Her voice was barely audible. the day Noah had texted me from Chicago about flight delays due to snow, when Denver had been experiencing unseasonably warm weather. I'd dismissed the inconsistency, assuming he was just confused in his travels. He was with us the entire Christmas weekend. Rachel continued, a question forming in her eyes. He told me he was stuck in Chicago until the 26th. Travel chaos, he said. Too many people trying to get home for the holidays. We stared at each other across the table, two women processing the same impossible reality from opposite sides. How did you find out? She finally asked. I explained my suspicions, the evidence I'd gathered, the private investigator. With each new detail, Rachel's shock transformed, first to disbelief, then to anger, and finally to a cold, focused clarity that mirrored my own evolution. Show me everything, she said. For the next hour, we pieced together the dual timelines of our lives with the same man. Rachel had met him first, when he truly was working at an advertising agency in Denver. Their relationship progressed normally: dating, engagement, marriage, a child. He'd always traveled frequently for work, she explained, which had made his absences seem natural. He started the remote work arrangement right after you came into the picture, she realized, studying the timeline. We'd said it was a better opportunity, more flexibility. Flexibility to maintain two families, I added. Rachel pushed her teacup away, untouched. All those nights I thought he was working late. All those business trips. He was with me, I confirmed. Just as he was with you when he told me the same things. She looked up, eyes suddenly sharp. Is there anyone else? A third family? The question hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't even considered the possibility. I don't know, I admitted. The investigator focused on his movements between our two households. Rachel laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Listen to us, discussing our husband's schedule like, he's a shared timeshare property. Ex-husband, I corrected. At least he will be soon. Her expression hardened. What exactly are you proposing, Emma? That we both divorce him and move on with our lives? Let him get away with this? No, I said firmly. I'm proposing we work together to ensure he faces appropriate consequences while protecting both our children from unnecessary trauma. I outlined the plan Caroline and I had developed, legal action combined with controlled revelation that would minimize public scandal while maximizing accountability. The first marriage is legally binding, I explained. Yours. Mine is technically invalid because he committed bigamy. But that works in my favor in terms of financial settlement. Fraud carries significant penalties. Rachel considered this. You've thought this through very carefully. I've had to, I replied, for Lily's sake, and for my own sanity. She was quiet for a long moment, fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. What does he say when you call him, Noah or Nick? The question caught me off guard with its intimacy. Noah. Always Noah. You? Always Nick. She shook her head. It's like he's two completely different people. Not different enough, I said. He uses the same birthday for both identities. September 12th. Rachel's eyes met mine. That's not his birthday, at least not according to his driver's license. It's August 3rd. A chill ran through me. If he'd lied about something as basic as his birthday, what else had been false? Was anything real? We need to find out who he actually is, Rachel said, a new determination in her voice. Before we confront him. I nodded, relieved that she was thinking along the same lines. My investigator can dig deeper. Birth certificate, education records, employment history. I have access to his passport, social security card, and medical records, she offered. Between the two of us. We can reconstruct the real Nicholas, I finished. As we continued comparing notes, a strange camaraderie developed between us, not friendship exactly, but a powerful alliance born of shared betrayal. We were no longer just victims. We were investigators, strategists, women reclaiming agency from a man who had stolen our autonomy through deception. By the time we parted 3 hours later, we had a concrete plan and a timeline for action. Rachel would secure additional documentation from their home and continue her normal routine. I would advance the investigation into Nicholas's true identity and background. We would meet again in 1 week with our findings. What if he suspects something? Rachel asked as we prepared to leave. What if he notices a change in our behavior? He won't, I said with certainty. He's spent years believing he's smarter than both of us. Men like that don't see the trap until it's already closed. She nodded, then hesitated before asking, Your daughter, does she look like him? She has his eyes, I admitted, and his smile. Ethan, too. A complicated emotion crossed her face. Not quite sadness, not quite anger. They're siblings who don't know each other exist. The reality of that, our children, connected by blood but separated by their father's deception, hit us both hard. Whatever happened next would affect not just us, but these innocent children. They'll know each other someday, I said. On their terms, not his. As I watched Rachel walk to her car, I felt a profound shift within myself. The shock and betrayal that had defined the past weeks were transforming into something else. Determination, clarity of purpose, and an unexpected sense of liberation. Noah Nicholas had constructed elaborate cages for both of us, gilded with half-truths and promises. But in his arrogance, he'd made a critical miscalculation. He'd chosen women who, when pushed to their limits, wouldn't break. They'd strategize. They'd cooperate. They'd rebuild. That night, when he returned home with takeout and kisses for Lily, I greeted him with a perfectly calibrated smile. Not too warm, not too distant. Just normal enough to maintain the illusion for a few more days. How was your day? He asked, setting the food on the kitchen counter. I thought of Rachel, of our shared timelines, of the plan now in motion. Transformative, I replied truthfully. Absolutely transformative. The week following my meeting with Rachel unfolded in parallel tracks. The visible life I maintained with Noah, and the hidden investigation I conducted with Rachel. The dichotomy felt strangely familiar. After all, wasn't this exactly how Noah had been living for years? The irony wasn't lost on me. Each morning, I'd kiss Noah goodbye as he left for work, then immediately text Rachel, Eagle has left the nest. She'd confirm when he arrived at the office, having driven past to verify his car in the parking lot. This coordination allowed us precious hours to work separately but in tandem, piecing together the puzzle of the man we'd both married. Rachel focused on his physical documentation. As his legal wife with cohabitation, she had access to his passport, birth certificate, and medical records. Meanwhile, I dove into digital forensics, working with Catherine to trace email accounts, financial histories, and online identities. The picture that emerged was more disturbing than either of us had anticipated. Nicholas Aaron Barrett was born in Tacoma, Washington, not Seattle as he'd told both of us. His parents weren't the principled, education-focused couple he'd described. Court records showed his father had served time for investment fraud when Nicholas was a teenager. He'd attended Washington State University for 2 years before dropping out, not the University of Washington with business honors as claimed. His first job wasn't at a prestigious Seattle advertising firm, but at a small print shop that mainly produced local flyers and business cards. He's constructed an entirely fictional biography, I told Rachel during our secure video call 3 days after our meeting. We'd established protocols for communication. Never from our homes, always using temporary accounts, keeping conversations brief and factual. The medical records confirm it, she replied, her face grim on my laptop screen. I'd stationed myself in a private study room at the library while she called from her hospital break room. He's been treated for anxiety and insomnia for years. His doctor notes reference work stress and compartmentalization issues multiple times. So, he knew what he was doing was wrong, I said, feeling a cold satisfaction at this confirmation. He experienced physical symptoms from the stress of maintaining dual lives. But not enough to stop. Rachel's voice hardened. Not enough to come clean to either of us. Our investigation also revealed financial deceptions even more extensive than we'd initially discovered. Noah Nicholas had been systematically diverting funds from both households into offshore accounts, small amounts that wouldn't immediately raise red flags, but substantial when accumulated over years. Approximately $137,000 from our accounts, Rachel calculated. How much from yours? I checked the spreadsheet Catherine had prepared. About $94,000 over 3 years. Over $250,000, she said, disbelief coloring her voice. What was he planning? An escape? It was a question that haunted me. Was this money his backup plan? An exit strategy if his double life was discovered? Or something more ominous, the foundation for yet another identity, another family we hadn't yet uncovered. While our investigation proceeded in secret, maintaining normalcy with Noah grew increasingly difficult. Each touch felt contaminated, each conversation, layered with subtext he couldn't perceive. I found myself studying him during ordinary moments, watching TV, playing with Lily, cooking dinner, searching for glimpses of the stranger we were uncovering. "You're quiet lately," he remarked one evening as we cleaned up after dinner. "Everything. Okay, at work?" The concern in his voice seemed genuine, which only intensified my confusion. How could someone show such authentic care while systematically deceiving me? The cognitive dissonance was exhausting. "Just tired," I said, the half-truth, easy on my lips. "A big campaign coming up." He nodded sympathetically. "You're pushing yourself too hard. Maybe take a mental health day? I could work from home on Friday, help with Lily." I nearly laughed at the irony. His suggestion to work from home was likely a cover to spend time with his other family. Yet, here he was, presenting it as a gesture of support. "That's thoughtful, but I've got meetings I can't reschedule." I dried my hands on a dish towel, avoiding his eyes. "Rain check?" He pulled me into an embrace that once would have felt comforting, but now made my skin crawl. "Of course, whatever you need." What I needed was the truth, a commodity in desperately short supply. 5 days after our initial meeting, Rachel made a critical discovery. She'd taken the day off work to search their condo thoroughly while Noah was allegedly at a conference in Phoenix, though we'd confirmed he was actually at our house, having told me he had a rare weekday off. "I found something," she texted from a burner phone. "Storage unit key, address on tag." The storage facility was in a nondescript industrial area between Denver and Boulder, conveniently located between his two families, yet far enough from both that neither would stumble upon it accidentally. Rachel and I met there the following day during our carefully coordinated window while Noah was verifiably at work. Unit 217 was medium-sized, climate-controlled, and meticulously organized, much like the man himself. Metal shelving lined the walls, holding clearly labeled plastic bins. In the center stood a simple desk with a locked file cabinet. "It's like command central for his double life," Rachel murmured, taking in the space. We worked methodically, photographing everything, before examining it. The bins contained seasonally appropriate clothing, duplicates of important documents, backup electronics, and emergency supplies. One shelf held gifts, wrapped and tagged for various occasions for both families. "For Lily, first birthday," read one package. "For Rachel, anniversary," read another. "He plans ahead," I said, the organized deception both impressive and revolting. "Ensures he's never caught without the appropriate gift for either family." The most revealing discovery came from the file cabinet, which Rachel opened with a key from her set. Inside were folders labeled with meticulous precision: Emma, schedule; Rachel, schedule; Ethan, medical; Lily, development; finances, primary; finances, secondary; exit strategy. That last folder held the answers we'd been seeking. Detailed plans for disappearing, new identification documents, banking information for accounts in the Cayman Islands, property listings for a small coastal town in Mexico. The exit strategy wasn't for if one wife discovered the other. It was for if both did. He was planning to abandon all of us, Rachel said, her voice hollow. Start over somewhere else if things fell apart. We photographed every document, careful to return everything, exactly as we'd found it. Before leaving, I noticed a calendar pinned to the wall beside the desk, color-coded for each family. Blue for Rachel and Ethan, green for Lily and me. This was how he'd managed to juggle his commitments for years, the visual system allowing him to avoid dangerous overlaps. Next Tuesday is blank, Rachel noted, studying the current month. That's unusual. He always has either blue or green noted. I checked my phone calendar. I don't have anything with him scheduled. Neither do I. We exchanged glances, both thinking the same thing. Was there a third color we didn't know about? That evening, I met with Caroline to share our findings. The storage unit evidence, combined with our previous documentation, had transformed our case from strong to airtight. This goes beyond simple bigamy, Caroline said, reviewing the photos of the exit strategy documents. This is premeditated. Fraud on multiple levels: financial, identity, legal. The DA could pursue serious charges. That's not necessarily what we want, I reminded her. Criminal prosecution would be public, messy, and potentially traumatic for the children. She nodded. But having the option gives us leverage. He'll be motivated to settle quickly and generously to avoid criminal charges. When do we confront him? That depends on what you want the outcome to be, Caroline said, her expression thoughtful. If this were purely about legal and financial resolution, I'd say we're ready now. But I sense there's something more personal at stake for you. She was right. This wasn't just about divorce settlements or legal vindication. It was about understanding how someone I'd loved so completely could live such a profound lie, and about ensuring he couldn't do this to anyone else. We need to know if there's a third family, I said finally. Before we confront him, we need to be certain we've uncovered everything. That night, as Noah slept beside me, the last time I would allow it, I reflected on the parallel journeys that had defined the past weeks. While he continued his elaborate deception, believing his dual lives remained safely compartmentalized, Rachel and I had been dismantling his facade piece by piece. We had transformed from unwitting participants in his fiction to authors of our own reality. The next morning, I watched him prepare for work with the strange detachment that had become my constant companion. He selected a blue tie, Rachel's, color in his coding system. He was planning to see them tonight then. I might be late tonight, he said right on cue. The Westridge presentation needs final revisions. No problem, I replied, kissing his cheek mechanically. Lily and I will manage. As he walked out the door, I sent a single text to Rachel. Blue tie today. Expect him by 7. Her response came seconds later. Confirmed. Meeting with Catherine at 10 to discuss the blank day. The mysterious, unmarked day on his calendar had become our focus. Catherine had adjusted her surveillance to concentrate on that upcoming Tuesday, seeking answers to the final question. Was Noah Nicholas juggling more than 2 families? Were there more women, more children, more elaborate deceptions waiting to be uncovered? I fed Lily her breakfast, watching her innocent enjoyment of mashed bananas. She was the one pure thing to emerge from this tangle of lies, and I was determined to protect her from the fallout. Whatever Noah had done, however many other lives he was living, Lily deserved better than a father who treated family as disposable, interchangeable. "We're going to be okay," I promised her, wiping banana from her chin. "Mommy's got this figured out." As I prepared for my meeting with Catherine, I received an unexpected text from Rachel. Found something in his personal email, a hotel reservation. For Tuesday, downtown Denver, room for 2. My blood ran cold. A third relationship seemed increasingly likely. "Forward it to Catherine," I replied. "She'll adjust surveillance accordingly." The parallel tracks of our lives were converging toward an inevitable collision. Noah believed he was still the conductor, orchestrating our separate existences with masterful precision. He didn't realize that Rachel and I had been quietly rewiring the tracks, preparing for a confrontation that would derail his carefully managed deception once and for all. As I grabbed my keys and prepared to meet Catherine, a strange calm settled over me. The weeks of shock, grief, and confusion had crystallized into clear-eyed purpose. Whatever we discovered about Tuesday's mysterious appointment, I was ready to face it. Not as the betrayed wife, but as a woman reclaiming her narrative. From the man who had tried to write it for her, Tuesday arrived with the weight of inevitability. For 10 days, Rachel and I had been preparing for this moment, gathering evidence, coordinating our approach, and steeling ourselves for confrontation. Catherine's surveillance had confirmed our suspicions. Noah had reserved a hotel room at the Grand Hyatt downtown under the name Michael Weiss, yet another identity in his collection. "The reservation is for 2 nights, Catherine explained during our final briefing in her office. "Check-in is scheduled for 3 p.m. today." Rachel studied the surveillance photos showing Noah entering a jewelry store yesterday afternoon. "Did you see what he purchased?" "Diamond earrings," Catherine replied. "High-end, about $5,000. I felt a hollow laugh escape me. Neither of us have pierced ears. Rachel's eyes met mine across the table. "So we're dealing with someone new." The plan we'd developed was precise, timed to the minute. Noah believed I was at a day-long client retreat, while he'd told Rachel he had a 3-day conference in San Diego. This gave us the perfect opportunity to confront him with minimal risk of him escaping or creating a scene that might affect the children. "Remember," Caroline cautioned as we reviewed the final details, "this confrontation is about information and control, not emotional catharsis. Get him to admit what he's done, record his confession, and present our terms. Don't get drawn into justifications or accusations." "What if he refuses to meet our terms?" Rachel asked, her voice steady despite the tension evident in her posture. "Then we proceed with Plan B," Caroline replied, tapping the folder containing the criminal complaint ready to be filed. "But he won't. Men like Nicholas prioritize self-preservation above all else. When he sees the evidence, he'll take the path of least resistance." At 2:45 p.m., Catherine confirmed Noah had arrived at the hotel, carrying an overnight bag and the gift-wrapped jewelry box. Rachel and I waited in a hotel room 1 floor below, watching the surveillance feed on Catherine's laptop. We'd chosen to wear nearly identical outfits, simple black dresses, minimal makeup, hair pulled back. The visual message was clear. We were united, interchangeable to him perhaps, but now a singular force he couldn't divide or manipulate. "He's checked in," Catherine announced, watching through the lobby camera. "Room 1217. I took a deep breath, fighting the sudden tremor in my hands. This was really happening. After days of investigation and weeks of deception, we were minutes away from confronting the man who had built his life on elaborate lies. Rachel reached over and squeezed my hand, a gesture of solidarity that would have seemed impossible 2 weeks ago. "Ready?" I nodded. "Ready." We took the service elevator to the 12th floor, while Catherine positioned herself in the lobby to ensure Noah didn't somehow slip past us. Our legal team waited in another room, ready with documentation if needed. Standing before room 1217, I felt a strange calm descend. The hurt, betrayal, and shock had burned away, leaving only clear-eyed purpose. I knocked 3 times, precise and firm. Noah opened the door with a smile that froze when he saw us standing side by side. "Emma," he said, eyes darting between us in confusion. "What are you—" "Hello, Noah," I said calmly. "Or do you prefer Nick? Or perhaps Michael today?" The blood drained from his face as recognition dawned. He tried to close the door, but Rachel had anticipated this, placing her foot in the doorway. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady. "All of us." "This is a mistake," he stammered, retreating into the room as we entered. "I can explain." "Yes," I agreed, closing the door behind us. "You certainly can. And you will." The hotel room was immaculate, with champagne chilling in an ice bucket and rose petals scattered across the bed. Romantic preparations for a woman who wasn't either of us. The gift box sat on the nightstand, wrapped in silver paper with a blue ribbon. "Nice touch," Rachel noted, gesturing toward the romantic setup. "You always did know how to make a girl feel special. Both of us can attest to that." Noah's eyes darted between us, calculations visibly racing behind his expression. I recognized the look. He was formulating a story, constructing plausible deniability, searching for a narrative that might explain away the unexplainable. "This is clearly a misunderstanding," he began, voice shifting into the smooth, reassuring tone he used when managing difficult situations. "I can see how this might look, but—" "Stop," I interrupted. "We know everything, Noah. Or should I call you Nicholas Aaron Barrett, born in Tacoma to Gerald and Maureen Barrett? Your father served time for fraud when you were 15. You dropped out of Washington State after 2 years. Your birthday is August 3rd, not September 12th. With each accurate detail, his facade cracked further. The confident, charming man I'd married was dissolving before my eyes, revealing someone smaller, more desperate. "We've seen the storage unit," Rachel continued, maintaining the momentum. "Unit 217 at Secure Space. We've documented your color-coded calendar, your meticulous files labeled with our names, your exit strategy for abandoning all of us. And now we know about your plans for today," I added, nodding toward the champagne. "Who is she, Noah? Wife number 3? Girlfriend? Someone you just met who has no idea what she's walking into?" He collapsed onto the edge of the bed, the performance of innocence abandoned. "How did you find each other?" he asked, voice barely audible. "I discovered the condo," I explained. "When you abandoned me during Lily's birth to be with Ethan in the hospital." Something flashed in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps even shame. Ethan had pneumonia. His oxygen levels were dropping. I had to choose, Rachel finished for him. "And you chose our son over Emma's delivery. Just like you chose Lily's pediatrician. Appointment over Ethan's school play. You've been making impossible choices every day for years, haven't you?" He looked up, something like relief crossing his features. "You understand then. I never meant to hurt anyone. I love both of you. Both families. I just couldn't choose," I supplied, disgust rising in my throat. "So instead you lived a lie, multiple lies, built entire fictional lives and kept us separated in neat compartments." "Who is she?" Rachel asked again, gesturing to the champagne. "And rose petals. The woman you're meeting today." Noah's shoulders sagged in defeat. "Her name is Vanessa. She's a client. It's not serious." "Not yet," I corrected. "But you were laying the groundwork, weren't you? Testing the waters for family number 3 while you were still managing the logistics of balancing us." He didn't deny it, which was confirmation enough. I placed my phone on the table between us, starting the recording app. "Here's what's going to happen now, Noah. You're going to tell us everything, the complete truth. When each relationship started, what you hope to gain, how you justified it to yourself. Then we'll discuss our terms." "Terms?" he repeated, wariness replacing defeat. "For how this ends," Rachel clarified. "Without criminal charges, without public humiliation, without losing access to your children." The mention of criminal charges straightened his posture. Self-preservation. Instincts just as Caroline had predicted. "What exactly do you want?" he asked cautiously. "First, the truth," I insisted. "For once in your relationship with either of us, complete honesty." He looked between us, apparently calculating his options and finding them limited. With a resigned sigh, he began to speak. "I met Rachel first, 4 years ago. It was uncomplicated at the beginning. I loved her. I still do." He glanced at her, but her expression remained impassive. "Then I met Emma during that hotel pitch. There was an immediate connection that I couldn't ignore. I told myself it would just be a brief affair, that I'd end it before anyone got hurt." "But you didn't," Rachel said flatly. "No," he admitted. "The more time I spent with Emma, the more I couldn't give her up. But I couldn't leave you and Ethan either." "So you created Noah Bennett," I said. "A separate identity." He nodded. "I never planned for it to go so far. But then Emma and I got engaged and things just escalated. Each step made the next one seem necessary." "And the money?" Rachel pressed. "The funds you've been diverting." "To offshore accounts?" A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "That was insurance, in case things fell apart. In case we discovered each other," I translated. "So you could disappear and start over." "I never wanted to use it," he insisted. "It was just peace of mind." "Peace of mind," Rachel repeated incredulously. "While you systematically lied to and stole from both your families. For nearly an hour we extracted the truth from him. Each deception, each calculation, each justification he'd created to live with himself. The man that emerged from this confession was both more and less than the husband I'd thought I knew. More calculating in his deceptions, less troubled by moral boundaries, yet also more fragile, desperately juggling identities to avoid making difficult choices." "I do love you both," he said finally, his voice hoarse from talking. "That was never a lie." "Love without honesty isn't love," I replied. "It's possession." Rachel opened her briefcase and removed 2 identical folders, placing one before him. "These are our terms, non-negotiable." Noah leafed through the documents, his expression growing increasingly alarmed. "This is everything. My savings, my investments, both properties." "Not everything," Rachel corrected. "Just what rightfully belongs to your families. You'll retain your retirement accounts and enough liquid assets to start over. Somewhere else." "And if I refuse?" I placed the second folder beside the first, the criminal complaint ready for filing. "Bigamy. Fraud. Financial crimes across state lines. The DA estimates 7 to 10 years, minimum." The blood drained from his face as he looked at the evidence we'd assembled. Phone records, financial transactions, falsified documents, all meticulously organized and annotated. "You have until tomorrow morning to decide," Rachel said, standing. "Sign the agreement, transfer the funds as specified, and this all stays private. Your children grow up knowing you moved away for work, not that their father is in prison for fraud. After today, you will not contact either of us directly," I added. "All communication regarding the children will go through our attorneys. You'll have scheduled video calls and limited supervised visits, contingent on your compliance with all terms." Noah looked up, desperation in his eyes. "I can't just disappear from their lives." "You were prepared to," I reminded him, nodding toward the criminal complaint with its evidence of his exit strategy. "The difference is, this way, you leave them with financial security and dignity, not abandoned and destitute. As we prepared to leave, a text message alert sounded from Catherine. Target 3 has arrived in lobby. Vanessa, right on schedule. It seems your date has arrived, Rachel noted coolly. What an interesting choice you have now. Try to warn her away and risk us approaching her with evidence of your deception, or let her come upstairs and find us here. Noah's face contorted with panic. Please, you've made your point. Let me handle this my way. That's the one luxury you no longer have, I said, moving toward the door. We'll be in touch tomorrow for your decision on our terms. As we left, I glanced back to see him frantically gathering the rose petals from the bed, trying to erase evidence of romantic intentions. The champagne, the jewelry box, the turned-down sheets, all his careful preparations, now just more evidence of his character. In the elevator, Rachel and I stood in silence, the weight of the confrontation settling over us. We had done it. Faced the man who had deceived us both, presented our unified demands, and walked away with our dignity intact. Do you think he'll sign? She asked as the elevator descended. He will, I replied with certainty. Men like Noah value self-preservation above all else. Prison terrifies him more than starting over. In the lobby, we caught a glimpse of a woman waiting nervously by the reception desk. Young, attractive, clutching her phone as she texted someone, presumably Noah. Another potential victim, unwittingly, about to step into his web of deception. Part of me wanted to warn her, to save her from what we had experienced, but that wasn't our responsibility anymore. We had our own healing to focus on, our own children to protect. As we stepped out into the afternoon sunlight, I felt the first genuine lightness in months. The confrontation hadn't brought the emotional catharsis I might once have craved, but something more valuable: clarity, agency, and the first steps toward a future no longer defined by someone else's lies. The 24 hours following our confrontation with Noah existed in a strange liminal space, no longer living in deception, not yet settled into truth. I returned home to find my mother caring for Lily, her questioning eyes meeting mine as I walked through the door. It's done, I said simply. We confronted him. She nodded, understanding the weight of those words. And now we wait. He has until tomorrow morning to sign our agreement. That night, I slept in the guest room, unable to bear the thought of the bed I'd shared with Noah. I lay awake, replaying moments from our marriage, recontextualizing them with my new understanding. The weekend trips he'd taken for work during which he'd been unreachable. The phone calls he'd step outside to take. The inconsistent stories about his childhood, which I'd attributed to normal memory lapses rather than careful fiction. Had there been signs I'd missed? Red flags I'd ignored? I tormented myself with these questions until exhaustion finally pulled me under around dawn. Morning arrived with Lily's babbling through the baby monitor. As I lifted her from her crib, her innocent smile untouched by the chaos swirling around her, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever happened with Noah, whatever choices lay ahead, this child deserved a mother who was whole, not defined by betrayal. My phone rang as I was preparing Lily's breakfast, Caroline calling with news. He signed, she said without preamble. All documents exactly as presented. The fund transfers have been initiated and should complete within 24-48 hours. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by a more complicated emotion. Noah's capitulation meant he valued freedom over fighting for his children. Another betrayal, though this one worked in our favor. Has he made any demands? I asked, settling Lily into her high chair. None. He's accepted all terms as written. Caroline paused. Emma, I've been practicing family law for 20 years, and I've never seen someone fold this completely without at least attempting to negotiate. I thought of Noah's face in that hotel room. The panic when confronted. The calculations visible behind his eyes. The ultimate surrender when presented with evidence of his crimes. He knows he has no leverage. And he knows we've only included a fraction of what we could pursue legally. Rachel's attorney says he's already packed his things from their condo, Caroline continued. Left his keys with the doorman with a note authorizing her to change the locks. So he was running, just as he'd planned in his exit strategy, though not on his terms. Has he asked about seeing the children before he goes? I already knew the answer, but some part of me needed to hear it. No, Caroline confirmed gently. I'm sorry, Emma. After ending the call, I sat beside Lily's high chair, watching her methodically smash cereal with pudgy fingers. How would I explain her father's absence when she was old enough to ask? What story could possibly honor her need for truth while protecting her from its full brutality? My phone chimed with a text from Rachel. It's over. He's gone. Coffee this afternoon. This strange new alliance, born of shared betrayal and forged through joint action, had become an unexpected source of strength. Green Bean Cafe at 3? I'll bring Lily. Perfect. Ethan will be with my sister, but I'd like to meet her soon. The unspoken reality hung between our messages. Our children were siblings who should know each other, bonds that would outlast the connection to the man who had created and then abandoned them. My mother arrived to watch Lily while I met with the locksmith. Are you sure you want to stay in this house? She asked as she folded laundry, eyeing the family photos I'd already removed from the walls. Too many memories. Good ones too, I reminded her. This is Lily's home, and legally it's mine now. I won't let him take that from us as well. The locksmith was efficient, changing every external lock and providing new keys. Another symbolic severing, another reclaiming of space. As he worked, I moved through the house gathering Noah's remaining possessions, clothing, personal items, mementos, packing them into boxes with mechanical precision. The wedding album went into a separate box, one I labeled, For Lily, When. She's older. She deserved to know her origin story someday, even if parts of it were painful. By afternoon, the house felt different, lighter somehow, as if Noah's deception had been a physical presence now exercised. I dressed Lily in her favorite outfit, a tiny denim jumper with embroidered daisies, and drove to the cafe where Rachel waited. Seeing her in this ordinary setting, casually dressed in jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, highlighted the absurdity of our situation. Two women who should have been strangers, now bound by extraordinary circumstances. You look different, she observed as I settled Lily into a high chair between us. So do you, I replied, noticing the same lightness in her expression that I felt in myself. Free. Not quite yet, but getting there. Rachel smiled at Lily, offering her finger, which my daughter promptly grabbed. She's beautiful, Emma. She has his dimple. Ethan has his eyes, I said, remembering the photos I'd seen. They should know each other. Rachel nodded, watching Lily with a softness that eased something tight in my chest. Half-siblings are still siblings. We won't punish them for his choices. As we sipped our coffee, the conversation shifted from Noah to ourselves, our backgrounds, careers, hopes for our children. In another life, under different circumstances, we might have been friends. Perhaps we still could be, though a different kind than either of us had imagined. He's asked for a video call with Ethan before he leaves, Rachel said as our meeting drew to a close. Scheduled for this evening. A pang of something, not quite jealousy, not quite hurt, flared in my chest. But not with Lily. I think he's ashamed, she said gently. Ethan knows him, has memories and a relationship. Lily is young enough that he can disappear without explanation, I finished. It's easier for him. Cowardly, Rachel corrected. But maybe better for her in the long run. No confusing halfway presence in her life. We parted with plans to introduce the children the following weekend, a play date that would begin building the sibling relationship they deserved. As I drove home, Lily sleeping peacefully in her car seat, my phone rang through the car's Bluetooth. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but some instinct made me press the button on my steering wheel. Hello? Emma. Noah's voice filled the car, instantly recognizable and suddenly alien. Please don't hang up. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What do you want? To say goodbye. To explain. You had your chance to explain in that hotel room, I interrupted, anger flaring. You chose self-preservation over honesty, just as you've always done. That's not fair, he protested, a familiar defensive note creeping into his voice. I'm giving you everything you asked for. The house, the money, my agreement to stay away. After you were caught, I reminded him. Not because you came clean or made things right? His sigh crackled through the speakers. I know you won't believe this, but I did love you, Emma. I loved both of you, in different ways. Love requires truth, I said, repeating what I'd told him in the hotel. What you felt was possession, control, the thrill of managing separate lives that never intersected. It wasn't like that. His voice had taken on the persuasive tone I'd once found charming, but now recognized as manipulation. I built lives with both of you because I couldn't bear to lose either of you. And yet you were setting up a third relationship, I noted coolly. Quite the collector. Silence stretched between us. Finally, he spoke again, voice subdued. I'm leaving for Austin tomorrow, starting over. I've signed everything, transferred the funds. You and Rachel will never have to worry about money. Our children will never have to worry about money, I corrected. That's the least you owe them after abandoning them. I'm not abandoning Lily, he protested. I'll send birthday gifts, college fund contributions. When she's older, if you'll allow it, I'd like to explain things to her myself. The presumption that he deserved access to Lily's life, that his preferences should be considered, ignited fresh anger. You abandoned her the moment you walked out of that delivery room for your other family. Everything since has been performance, not parenting. That's not... You haven't even asked to see her before you leave, I continued, unable to contain the words now flowing freely. You haven't fought for visitation rights or regular calls. You signed away your parental authority without negotiation because it was easier than facing what you've done. His silence confirmed the truth of my assessment. I know you're angry, he finally said. You have every right to be. But someday, when the hurt isn't so fresh, I hope you'll consider allowing me some role in Lily's life, even a distant one. I pulled into my driveway, putting the car in park but leaving the engine running. Noah, I need you to understand something. I'm not keeping Lily from you out of anger or revenge. I'm protecting her from the pain of a father who treats relationships as disposable. When she's old enough to make her own choices about you, I won't stand in her way. But until then, my job is to keep her safe, emotionally as well as physically. I understand, he said quietly. More than you think. One last thing, I said, an important point suddenly clear in my mind. Rachel and I have decided the children should know each other. They're siblings, regardless of how we feel about you. His sharp intake of breath suggested this possibility hadn't occurred to him, that his carefully separated worlds might connect without him at the center. That's good, he managed. They should know each other. Goodbye, Noah, I said, reaching for the end call button. Or Nicholas, or whoever you actually are. Emma, wait! His voice cut off as I disconnected. In the back seat, Lily stirred, blinking awake with the timing that only babies seem to possess. I turned to look at her. This perfect, innocent child who would grow up without her father present. but surrounded by truth and love and authentic connections. "We're home, sweetheart," I said, voice steady despite the turbulence of emotions Noah's call had stirred. "Just you and me now." As I unbuckled her from her car seat, I realized I was standing at a pivotal choice point, not about Noah, whose role in our future was now clearly defined, but about how I would move forward. Would I allow his betrayal to define me, to make me bitter and mistrustful? Or would I choose to build something new from the ashes of what I'd thought was my life? Lily reached for me, her tiny hands patting my cheeks as if sensing my inner turmoil. In her innocent touch, the answer became clear. The past could not be changed, but the future remained unwritten. And I was holding the pen. 3 months after Noah's departure, the first tangible signs of spring appeared in Denver. Crocuses pushed through the soil in my front garden, their purple and yellow blooms, a reminder that renewal follows even the harshest winters. I watched Lily toddle unsteadily across the living room carpet, 9 months old now, and determined to master walking, falling, and getting up with the resilience only children seem to possess. "That's it, sweet girl," I encouraged as she made 3 steps before plopping down, face lighting up with pride at her achievement. "You're getting it." The doorbell rang, and Lily's head swiveled toward the sound, her whole body wiggling with excitement. She recognized what it meant: visitors, likely her favorite playmate. Rachel stood on the porch, Ethan's small hand in hers. At almost 4, he was a miniature version of his father: curly hair, thoughtful brown eyes, and dimples that appeared with his smile. But unlike Noah, there was no calculation behind that smile, only a child's open enthusiasm. "Emmy!" he called, using his nickname for me as he bounded inside. "Is Lily awake? Can we play with the blocks?" "She's right there waiting for you," I replied, accepting the bag of toddler snacks Rachel offered. "And yes to the blocks, but remember, be gentle 'cause she's still little," he finished, having heard the reminder during previous visits. He approached Lily carefully, sitting cross-legged beside her and offering a colorful plastic block. My daughter accepted it with a delighted squeal, immediately putting it in her mouth. Rachel and I exchanged amused glances as we moved into the kitchen, close enough to supervise but giving the children their space. This Sunday afternoon ritual had become an anchor in our new reality, a bi-weekly playdate that nurtured the sibling relationship, while allowing Rachel and me to build our own unexpected friendship. "How was his call with Noah yesterday?" asked, preparing coffee for us both. The monthly video calls between Ethan and his father had continued, structured and supervised as our agreement stipulated. Rachel sighed, leaning against the counter. Brief. Noah showed him the beach near his new place in Austin, promised to send shells. Ethan was more interested in telling him about his new dinosaur book than hearing about Daddy's adventure. "That's progress," I noted, recognizing the healthy detachment developing in Ethan. "Less attachment anxiety?" "Some," she agreed. "The child psychologist says he's adjusting well, all things considered. The consistency of our new routine helps." She hesitated before adding, "Noah asked about Lily again." This had become a pattern, Noah inquiring about my daughter during his calls with Ethan, sending tentative messages through Rachel instead of contacting me directly as our agreement required. "The answer hasn't changed," I said, keeping my voice neutral to avoid transferring my feelings to Rachel. "When Lily is older, I'll consider supervised video calls if she expresses interest. Until then, my focus is on stability." Rachel nodded, understanding without judgment. Our approaches to handling Noah's continued presence differed slightly. She allowed the structured calls with Ethan, while I maintained firmer boundaries with Lily. But we respected each other's decisions, recognizing the different ages and needs of our children. "The trust fund paperwork came through," she mentioned as we carried our coffee to the breakfast nook overlooking the children. "Did you get yours?" "Yesterday," The irony wasn't lost on me that Noah had actually followed through on one promise, establishing substantial education trusts for both children. It's generous. Blood money, Rachel murmured, then winced. Sorry, that's not fair to the kids. But accurate to how it feels, I acknowledged, though I prefer to think of it as their inheritance from a father who couldn't provide emotional stability but can at least ensure financial security. We'd both become adept at this, reframing Noah's actions in ways that acknowledged the harm while extracting whatever positive elements existed for our children's benefit. It was part of our shared healing process, this careful balancing of truth and grace. Our conversation shifted to lighter topics. Ethan's preschool adventures, Lily's newest developmental milestones, Rachel's recent promotion at the hospital. The easy rhythm of friendship that had developed between us still occasionally struck me as surreal. This woman who by all conventional logic should be my adversary had instead become an essential part of my support system. I've been thinking about dating again, Rachel said suddenly, eyes fixed on her coffee cup. Not seriously, just dinner. Conversation with an adult that doesn't revolve around children or work or our shared ex-husband? I finished with a small smile. That sounds healthy. Too soon? She asked, uncertainty flickering across her face. I considered this thoughtfully. I don't think there's a standard timeline for moving forward after what we experienced. If you feel ready, that's what matters. I met someone at work. She admitted. A radiologist. He asked me to dinner next Friday. I told him I needed to think about it. Do you want to go? Yes, she said with surprising conviction. But I feel guilty, like I'm somehow betraying Ethan by moving on too quickly. I reached across the table to squeeze her hand. Ethan deserves a happy mother. If having dinner with this radiologist brings you joy, that's good for him too. She nodded, visibly relieved. What about you? Have you thought about dating? Not even remotely, I replied honestly. Between Lily, work, and rebuilding my sense of self, there's no space for someone new yet. Maybe someday, but not now. We were interrupted by Ethan's excited voice. Mommy! Emmy! Look! Lily's standing by herself! We turned to see Lily balanced precariously on her chubby legs, an expression of intense concentration on her face as she maintained her position without support for the first time. The shared joy of witnessing this milestone together. Rachel, as moved as I was, underscored how thoroughly our lives had intertwined. Good job, Lily, Rachel praised, clapping her hands encouragingly. My daughter, bolstered by the attention, attempted a step forward and promptly tumbled onto her padded bottom. Instead of crying, she giggled and began the process of pulling herself up again, determination undiminished. She's resilient, Rachel observed. Like her mother. The comment touched me deeply. Like both her mothers, I corrected softly. Later that evening, after Rachel and Ethan had left and Lily was asleep in her crib, I found myself drawn to the home office I'd reclaimed from Noah's sporadic use. In the month since his departure, I'd systematically transformed this space. New, paint, different furniture arrangement, artwork that reflected my aesthetic rather than our compromised blend. It was here that I'd begun to rebuild not just my personal life, but my professional identity as well. My laptop held a half-finished proposal for Luminous Marketing's newest client, an ethical cosmetics company whose values aligned with my own, evolving perspective. My return to full-time work had come with unexpected opportunities, including the chance to reshape our agency's approach to client relationships and campaign development. We want authenticity in our marketing, I'd told my team during a recent strategy session. Not the illusion of it. Our clients deserve campaigns built on genuine connections, not manufactured personas. The irony of learning this lesson from Noah's deception wasn't lost on me or my colleagues. What had been a painful personal experience had transformed into professional insight that was now shaping our agency's direction. As I worked on the proposal, my phone chimed with a text from Daphne. "Drinks tomorrow? The team misses you." The invitation prompted reflection on another aspect of my post-Noah integration, reclaiming friendships I'd inadvertently neglected during my marriage. Noah had subtly but effectively isolated me, creating a world where our relationship was central and other connections peripheral. Not through overt control, but through the constant demands of his complicated scheduling and priority shifting. "Absolutely," I replied. "Green room at 6? My calendar app opened to confirm the appointment, displaying the week ahead, color-coded, blocks representing work commitments, childcare, personal time, and family obligations. The organizational system was eerily similar to the one I'd discovered in Noah's storage unit, a realization that initially disturbed me until my therapist helped me reframe it. Using similar tools doesn't make you similar people, Dr. Mitchell had pointed out during one of our weekly sessions. Your calendar organizes a transparent, integrated life. His compartmentalized a fractured, deceptive one. The tool isn't the issue, it's the intention behind it. Dr. Mitchell had been instrumental in my healing process, helping me navigate the complex emotional landscape of betrayal, anger, grief, and ultimately, renewal. Our sessions had evolved from crisis management to thoughtful reflection on the lessons I was integrating into my new life. "What have you learned from this experience that you value?" she'd asked during our most recent appointment. The question had stayed with me, prompting ongoing reflection about the unexpected gifts hidden within trauma. Tonight, as I closed my laptop and prepared for bed, those lessons seemed particularly clear. I'd learned to trust my instincts. The small voice that had whispered something wasn't right even when presented with plausible explanations. I'd discovered reserves of strength I hadn't known I possessed, facing devastating truths without being destroyed by them. I'd found the courage to rebuild rather than simply survive, to seek meaning rather than just closure. Perhaps most surprisingly, I'd discovered authentic connection in the most unlikely circumstances. My relationship with Rachel had evolved, from shared victimhood to genuine friendship, bonded not just by common trauma, but by mutual respect and shared values. As I checked on Lily one last time before sleep, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest in the soft nightlight glow, another lesson crystallized: the profound difference between love as possession and love as presence. Noah had claimed to love both his families, but his version of love was about having, controlling, arranging lives to suit his needs. True love, I now understood more deeply, was about being fully present, about choosing someone's well-being even when difficult or inconvenient. The following morning brought news that tested this evolving philosophy. Caroline called as I was preparing for work, Lily happily engaged with breakfast in her high chair. "Emma, I wanted you to hear this from me first," she began, her professional tone softened with concern. "Noah has filed a petition to modify the visitation agreement. He's requesting monthly video calls with Lily, similar to his arrangement with Ethan." The news landed like a stone in still water, ripples of reaction spreading outward. Initial anger, defensive protectiveness, strategic calculation. On what grounds? He claims that as he's established a stable living situation in Austin and maintained consistent contact with Ethan, he should be granted similar access to Lily. His attorney argues that denying this creates an unfair disparity between siblings. I closed my eyes, absorbing this calculated move. Of course Noah would position himself as the wronged party, leveraging the sibling relationship Rachel and I had nurtured to force his way back into Lily's life on his terms, not hers. "What are our options?" I asked, lawyer brain engaging despite the emotional undertow. "Several," Caroline replied. "We can oppose outright, which has a good chance of success given the circumstances of his departure. We can counteroffer with more limited terms, Annual rather than monthly contact, perhaps, or we can agree with specific conditions attached. I need to think about this, I said, watching Lily smash banana between her fingers, blissfully unaware of the adult complications swirling around her. And I should talk to Rachel. Take your time, Caroline advised. We have 30 days to respond. But Emma, this doesn't have to be adversarial. Sometimes strategic flexibility achieves better long-term outcomes than rigid opposition. After ending the call, I sat beside Lily's high chair, gently wiping banana from her chubby cheeks as I processed this new development. My initial instinct was absolute refusal. Noah had forfeited his right to any relationship with Lily when he abandoned her birth, and then signed away his parental authority without protest. But beneath that reactive layer, more nuanced considerations emerged. What would best serve Lily long-term? Did opposing Noah's petition protect her or potentially create future complications? As she grew older and understood her connection to Ethan, would she resent being kept from the father her brother knew? Could controlled, minimal contact now establish boundaries that served her interests better than complete separation? These questions followed me throughout the day, resurfacing during quiet moments between meetings and presentations. By evening, I'd reached a measured perspective that balanced protective instincts with pragmatic foresight. Rachel arrived for our hastily arranged coffee meeting after we'd both finished work, the children staying with their respective grandmothers. "You've heard," she said, noting my expression as she settled across from me at our usual cafe table. "Caroline called this morning." "You?" "My attorney this afternoon." She stirred her coffee methodically. "What are you thinking?" I appreciated the direct question, so characteristic of our relationship. "I'm thinking Noah is using Ethan's relationship with him as leverage to force contact with Lily, regardless of what's best for her." Rachel nodded. Classic Noah, finding the pressure point and exploiting it. "But," I continued, "I'm also thinking about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when Lily understands she has a brother who knows their father while she doesn't. I worry about creating a narrative where she feels I kept her father from her, rather than the truth, that he chose to leave." "The monthly calls with Ethan are superficial at best," Rachel offered. 20 minutes of Noah showing off his new life while asking surface questions. It's performance parenting, not relationship building. Which is exactly what I want to protect Lily from, I agreed. But complete prohibition might backfire as she gets older. We discussed various approaches, weighing legal strategies against psychological considerations, immediate protection against long-term implications. The conversation exemplified how far we'd come. 2 women collaborating thoughtfully about children they both loved, each bringing valuable perspective to a complex situation. "What if we counter with annual contact initially?" Rachel suggested. "A birthday video call, perhaps. Something symbolic that acknowledges his biological connection without creating dependency or confusion." "With specific conditions," I added, the approach taking shape. "No gifts unless approved in advance. No promises to Lily he may not keep. No disparaging remarks about either of us or our parenting choices." "And accountability measures," Rachel continued. "The call's recorded for review. Immediate termination if he violates conditions." We refined this approach over another hour, eventually reaching a balanced position that allowed minimal, highly structured contact while maintaining firm boundaries. It wasn't perfect. No solution involving Noah could be. But it felt integrated, acknowledging complex realities while prioritizing Lily's emotional health. Walking home afterward, I reflected on how this situation embodied the lessons of the past months. I was no longer reacting from hurt or fear, but responding from a centered place that incorporated understanding without surrendering boundaries. I could acknowledge Noah's biological connection to Lily without granting him the father's role he hadn't earned. I could collaborate with Rachel on consistent approaches for both children without sacrificing my independent judgment about my daughter's needs. Most importantly, I'd learned that healing wasn't about erasing the past, but about integrating it, carrying forward its lessons while refusing to be defined by its wounds. That evening, I called my mother to update her on the situation while she watched Lily at her house. "You sound different," she observed after I explained our planned response to Noah's petition. "More settled." "I feel more integrated," I replied, the word feeling precisely right. Less like I'm reacting to what happened and more like I'm creating what comes next. "That's wisdom," she said simply. "Hard-earned, but valuable." Later, as I prepared for bed in the house that now truly felt like mine alone, I found myself drawn to the small box of mementos I'd set aside for Lily. It contained selected photographs, her birth announcement, and a letter I'd written explaining her father's absence in age-appropriate terms she might read someday. I added a new note, dated and honest. "Today your father asked to have video calls with you, like he has with your brother Ethan. After careful thought and discussion with Rachel, I've decided to allow limited contact under specific conditions. I want you to know him on your own terms when you're ready, but also to be protected while you're still too young to understand the complicated circumstances of his choices. Every decision I make is with your well-being at heart, both for now and for your future." Sealing this note in an envelope marked with the date, I returned the memory box to its shelf. This small act embodied the integration I was living, acknowledging Noah's existence in Lily's story, without allowing his deception to dictate her narrative or mine. The next morning brought another development. An email from Noah, properly routed through our attorneys as required by our agreement. The subject line read simply, "Thank you." The message itself was brief. "Caroline informed me of your counterproposal. I accept all conditions without modification. I appreciate your willingness to allow me some connection with Lily despite everything that's happened. I understand this doesn't erase my actions or excuse my choices. All I can do now is be consistently present in the limited ways you've permitted, and hope that someday both children might know that despite my profound failures as a husband, I do love them." Reading his words, I felt neither vindication nor sympathy, but something more neutral, recognition of a flawed person attempting a step toward accountability, however small. Whether this represented genuine growth or strategic positioning was impossible to know and ultimately irrelevant to my own path forward. I forwarded the email to Caroline with simple instructions. Proceed with the counterproposal as discussed. Ensure all conditions are explicitly documented in the modified agreement. With that task complete, I turned my attention to the day ahead. A client presentation in the morning, lunch with Daphne to discuss a potential promotion, picking up Lily from daycare for her pediatrician appointment, dinner with my mother. Ordinary life, rebuilt from extraordinary circumstances. As I prepared for this normal day, I caught sight of myself in the bedroom mirror, still recognizably the woman Noah had married, but with subtle differences that reflected internal transformation. My posture was more grounded, my expression more self-possessed. I'd cut my hair shorter in a style that suited me rather than one Noah had preferred. Small, visible changes that hinted at deeper evolution. The woman in the mirror had integrated betrayal without being diminished by it, had discovered strength precisely because it had been tested. She'd learned that healing isn't linear, but spiral, revisiting painful territory from progressively higher ground, seeing new perspectives with each revolution. Most importantly, she'd discovered that the end of one story isn't the end of all stories. Noah's deception had concluded a chapter, but opened possibilities for narratives I was now authoring myself, about motherhood, friendship, career, and personal growth. About the family Lily would know, unconventional but authentic, built on truth rather than illusion. As I left for work, spring sunshine warming the newly green lawn, I felt the integrated lessons of the past year as a tangible presence, not weighing me down, but providing foundation for each step forward. The future remained unwritten, but I now held the pen with steady hands, ready to compose whatever came next. 1 year to the day after I discovered Noah's secret family, I stood in my backyard watching Lily chase bubbles across the grass, her delighted squeals punctuating the warm summer afternoon. At 18 months, she was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity, dark curls bouncing as she moved, determined little hands reaching for iridescent spheres that burst at her touch. "Again," she demanded, turning to me with Noah's dimpled smile. "More bubbles, Mama," I obliged, dipping the wand and sending another stream of bubbles floating on the breeze. Watching her joyful pursuit, I marveled at how much had changed in a year, not just in Lily's development from infant to toddler, but in my own evolution from devastated wife to confident single mother. The anniversary had arrived without the emotional weight I'd anticipated. Instead of reopening wounds, the date served as a marker of distance traveled, a measurement of healing rather than trauma. I'd acknowledged it that morning in my journal, another habit I'd developed during recovery, noting the milestone without allowing it to define my day. The patio gate swung open as Rachel arrived with Ethan, who immediately dropped his mother's hand and ran to join his sister in bubble chasing. "Sorry we're late," Rachel called, setting down a grocery bag on the patio table. Someone insisted on bringing his new dinosaur book to show Lily, then couldn't find it, then found it under his bed along with 3 missing socks and half a sandwich I'd rather not think about. I laughed, recognizing the universal chaos of parenting a preschooler. "No worries. The others should be here soon." Rachel began unpacking the bag, ingredients for the pasta salad she'd volunteered to make for our gathering. This was another evolution of the past year. Our cautious alliance had blossomed into genuine friendship, complete with family celebrations that merged our separate circles into something new and unconventional. "How are you feeling about today?" she asked, glancing up from chopping vegetables. The question held layers of meaning we both understood without elaboration. "Surprisingly okay," I replied, watching the children play. "More focused on what we've built than what we lost." Rachel nodded, understanding reflected in her eyes. Trevor asked if it was weird, celebrating this particular anniversary. I told him it wasn't an anniversary of loss, but of liberation. Trevor was the radiologist who had moved from cautious first date to steady presence in Rachel's life over the past 6 months. Thoughtful and patient, he'd approached her situation, including her friendship with me and Ethan's relationship with Lily, with admirable openness. His attendance today represented another milestone in our evolving family constellation. "Is he still nervous about meeting everyone?" I asked, knowing Trevor had expressed anxiety about navigating the unconventional dynamics of our social circle. "Terrified," Rachel confirmed with affectionate amusement. He changed shirts 3 times and practiced what he called his non-awkward introduction in the mirror. "Tell him we don't bite," I assured her. "Besides, my mother will be so thrilled to see you dating someone nice that she'll barely notice him fumbling." The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of other guests. Today's gathering included my mother, Rachel's sister and her husband, Daphne, and her partner from work, and 2 other friends who had been particularly supportive during the past year. A small celebration of the family we'd chosen, the connections that had sustained us through upheaval. As the afternoon progressed, our backyard filled with conversation and laughter. Trevor did indeed fumble his initial introductions, but relaxed visibly when my mother engaged him in conversation about his work in pediatric radiology. Ethan appointed himself Lily's official protector, solemnly explaining to the adults that she needed careful watching because she was still learning about dangerous things like stairs and hot stuff. Standing at the grill, turning vegetable skewers while chatting with Rachel's brother-in-law, I felt a profound sense of rightness, not despite the circumstances that had brought us here, but because of how we'd transformed those circumstances into something meaningful. "You've created something remarkable," Daphne observed, joining me with a glass of lemonade. "Not many people could turn such betrayal into whatever this beautiful thing is." I considered her observation as I arranged the grilled vegetables on a serving platter. I think the key was refusing to let Noah's actions dictate our response. The moment Rachel and I decided to ally rather than oppose each other, we changed the narrative. "Still," Daphne persisted, "it would have been easier to just separate your lives completely." "Easier, maybe, but not better," I replied, watching Ethan help Lily climb onto a play structure. "Those children are siblings. They deserve to know each other, regardless of their father's choices." The mention of Noah brought an inevitable question. "Has he maintained the video calls with Lily?" I nodded, surprised by my own lack of emotional reaction to the topic. "Monthly as agreed. 15 minutes strictly scheduled. He's been appropriate. No grand promises, no undermining comments, just basic getting-to-know-you interaction. It's, cordial." What I didn't articulate was how strange those calls remained. Watching my daughter interact with the man whose deception had shattered my trust, but whose genetic contribution had given her those dimples, that determined chin, that infectious laugh. The man who was neither fully stranger nor truly father, occupying an ambiguous space we were still learning to navigate. "And Rachel's son still talks to him more regularly?" "Weekly calls," I confirmed. "Different situation. Ethan has memories of Noah, an established relationship. Lily's starting from zero." The first video call between Noah and Lily had been awkward, tense, me sitting beside her, monitoring every word, ready to end the call at the slightest misstep. Noah's face on the screen, carefully neutral, yet unable to hide his shock at how much she'd grown in his absence. Lily herself oblivious to the significance, interested primarily in the buttons on the tablet, rather than the stranger calling her sweetheart. Subsequent calls had established a predictable pattern. Noah would ask simple questions appropriate to Lily's age and development, share brief glimpses of his life in Austin, usually involving his dog or the beach near his apartment, and respect the time limits without protest. His interactions remained cautious, as if aware that one wrong move could terminate this tenuous connection. What had surprised me most was my own evolution from rigid hostility to guarded pragmatism. The calls were neither as traumatic as I'd feared, nor as meaningful as Noah might have hoped. Simply a negotiated space where Lily could begin forming her own impressions of this person who was connected to her, but not central to her daily life. "Enough about Noah," I said, changing the subject. "How's the promotion working out?" Daphne's face lit up as she described her new role leading Luminous Marketing's digital strategy department, a position that had opened partly due to my recommendation. My own career had undergone significant transformation as well. 6 months after Noah's departure, I'd been offered partnership at the agency, a culmination of professional growth accelerated rather than hindered by personal challenge. "The client presentation you developed for Everglow's new campaign changed everything," Daphne said. "That whole approach about authentic beauty and rejecting perfectionism, it resonated because it was real. You were living it." She was right. My experience with Noah's betrayal had fundamentally altered my perspective on authenticity, both personally and professionally. The campaign that had secured my partnership had been born directly from that insight. Marketing that embraced imperfection rather than disguising it, that celebrated resilience rather than unattainable ideals. Our conversation was interrupted by Ethan's excited voice. "Emmy, look what Trevor can do!" I turned to see Trevor performing an elaborate magic trick with quarters, Ethan and Lily watching in wide-eyed amazement. The radiologist had apparently been hiding talent beyond medical imaging, his earlier nervousness replaced by confident performance as he entertained the children. "He's good with them," I observed to Rachel, who had joined us by the grill. He is, she agreed, unmistakable warmth in her voice. It scared me at first, how quickly Ethan attached to him. I worried it was too soon, that I was allowing another potential disappointment into his life. But, I prompted, recognizing there was more to her thought. But I realized I can't protect Ethan from all possible hurt without also protecting him from connection. The risk of attachment is the price of meaningful relationships. She smiled wryly. Something my therapist reminds me regularly. Her words resonated with my own journey. Learning to trust again after Noah hadn't been about finding guarantees against further betrayal. Such certainty didn't exist. It had been about developing confidence in my own resilience, knowing I could survive disappointment without being destroyed by it. As the gathering continued into early evening, I found myself observing the interconnected relationships that had formed in the aftermath of Noah's departure. The unlikely friendship between Rachel and my mother, the playful bond between Ethan and Lily, the easy camaraderie among friends who had each supported us in different ways. What had begun as crisis management had evolved into genuine community, a network of connections stronger for having been deliberately chosen rather than circumstantially inherited. After our guests departed, Rachel and Trevor stayed to help, with cleanup, the four of us working in companionable efficiency while the children played with new toys in the living room. "I have some news," Rachel said as we loaded the dishwasher. Her tone was carefully neutral, but I caught an undercurrent of significance. "Good news or complicated news?" I asked, recognizing the subtle tension in her expression. "Both, maybe." She glanced toward Trevor, who nodded encouragement. "I've been offered a position at Children's Hospital in Austin, Chief Nursing Officer for the Pediatric Oncology Department. It's a major opportunity." The revelation landed with complex impact, immediate happiness for her professional recognition, followed quickly by concern about what this might mean for our carefully constructed arrangement. "Rachel, that's amazing," I said, meaning it despite the complications. "When would you start?" "That's the complicated part," she admitted. "They want me there by September, which means decisions about Ethan's school, living arrangements, and—" She hesitated. "How we maintain the children's relationship." The implied question hung between us. Could our unconventional family structure survive geographical separation? Would the sibling bond we'd nurtured between Ethan and Lily withstand distance? And the question neither of us voiced directly, how? Would Noah factor into this new arrangement, with Rachel and Ethan in the same city as him? "We'll figure it out," I said with more confidence than I felt. This is too important an opportunity to pass up. Trevor, who had remained quietly supportive during this exchange, spoke up. "I've been offered a position there too, different hospital, but same time frame." The pieces clicked into place. Their concurrent opportunities, the careful way they'd introduced the news. This wasn't a spontaneous development, but something they'd been considering together. "You've been planning this," I observed, no accusation in my tone, merely recognition. "Exploring options," Rachel clarified. "Nothing was decided until we knew both offers were firm, and nothing will be finalized without figuring out how it affects the kids." The pragmatic problem solver in me immediately began cataloging considerations: travel logistics for visits, video call schedules, holiday arrangements. But beneath these practical concerns lay more profound questions about attachment and adaptation, about how these children who had already navigated significant disruption would manage another transition. "Have you told Noah?" I asked, the question unavoidable despite my reluctance to center him in the conversation. "Not yet," Rachel replied. "I wanted to talk with you first. We're a family unit in our own way, Emma. Your perspective matters more than his." Her words touched me deeply. Through all the chaos and rebuilding, this was perhaps the most meaningful outcome. The family we had created, not through traditional bonds, but through conscious choice and shared values. Thank you for that, I said, emotion making my voice slightly unsteady. I think we need to approach this as an opportunity, not just a challenge. We've already defied conventional expectations about how families like ours are supposed to function. Why stop now? Later that night, after Rachel, Trevor, and Ethan had left and Lily was asleep, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine, processing the day's revelations. The potential move represented yet another evolution in our complex situation, one that would require new adaptations, different boundaries, creative solutions to unprecedented questions. My phone chimed with an incoming email, Rachel sending promised information about the Austin position, including links to the hospital's website and details about the pediatric oncology program she would lead. As I scrolled through the materials, I found myself genuinely excited for her, this woman who had transformed from Noah's other wife to one of my closest friends. Another notification appeared, a calendar reminder for Lily's monthly call with Noah, scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. The timing seemed pointed, a cosmic reminder of all the interconnected elements requiring navigation. On impulse, I opened my contacts and selected Noah's number, something I hadn't done in months, all communication flowing through attorneys or the structured video call system. The phone rang 3 times before he answered, surprise evident in his voice. Emma? I needed to tell you something directly, I said, bypassing social pleasantries. Rachel has been offered a position in Austin. She and Ethan will likely be moving there in September. A lengthy silence followed, broken only by the sound of his measured breathing. When he finally spoke, his tone was carefully neutral. I see. And you're telling me this because it affects all of us, I replied evenly. New arrangements will need to be made for the children to maintain their relationship. New boundaries established regarding your involvement with both of them. What are you asking me? Wariness colored his question, the ingrained caution of a man who had learned his limitations the hard way. I'm not asking anything yet, I clarified. I'm informing you of a development that impacts our situation. Rachel and I will develop a proposed arrangement for how this works going forward. Your cooperation will be appreciated, but isn't optional. The children's well-being remains the priority. Another pause, then, you and Rachel continue to surprise me. How so? Most women in your situation would be adversaries, not allies. Certainly not friends planning complex family arrangements together. Most women in our situation weren't married to someone who taught us exactly how destructive adversarial relationships can be, I countered, surprising myself with the lack of bitterness in the observation. It was simply truth, neutrally stated. Noah absorbed this in silence before responding. For what it's worth, I would like to help make this transition work for the children, whatever that looks like. I appreciate that, I replied, meaning, despite the complicated history between us. We'll be in touch through the proper channels once plans take shape. After ending the call, I sat with the realization that this brief exchange with Noah had been almost normal. Not friendly or intimate, but functional, adult, focused on practical matters rather than emotional wounds. It represented yet another milestone in the ongoing integration of past and present, the ability to engage with the source of betrayal without being consumed by it. The following weeks brought intense planning sessions with Rachel, pragmatic discussions about logistics, schedules, finances, and boundaries for the new arrangement. We developed a proposal that included quarterly visits in either direction, Ethan coming to Denver or Lily traveling to Austin, always with one of us accompanying her until she was older. Monthly siblings-only video calls supplementing the regular contact. Summer weeks and holiday rotations carefully mapped to maximize their time together while working within practical constraints. Noah's role required particular consideration. With Rachel and Ethan in Austin, the existing visitation schedule would need adjustment. After thoughtful discussion, we proposed supervised in-person visits on alternating months, replacing the weekly video calls with more substantive but still carefully bounded interaction. "What about Lily?" Rachel asked during one planning session. "Will this change your approach to her relationship with him?" It was a question I'd been contemplating since learning of the move. "I think it might need to," I admitted. "If she's visiting Austin to see Ethan, maintaining the artificial separation from Noah becomes more complicated and potentially confusing." "What are you considering?" "Limited, supervised contact during her Austin visits," I said, the decision forming as I articulated it. "Not overnight stays or extended time, but perhaps shared activities with both children. Enough for her to understand who he is within the context of her relationship with Ethan." Rachel nodded thoughtfully. "Controlled integration rather than compartmentalization. The opposite of how Noah managed his relationships with us." "Exactly," I agreed. "I don't want Lily growing up with the same fragmented reality he created, even if that means allowing him more presence than I might have chosen under different circumstances." This approach represented my most significant shift yet, from protective isolation to carefully managed inclusion, acknowledging Noah's biological connection to Lily while maintaining clear boundaries around his role in her life. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, nor was it reconciliation in any conventional sense. It was something more nuanced, a pragmatic integration that prioritized Lily's long-term psychological health over my own justified wariness. When our proposal was finalized, we presented it through our attorneys as a unified position, not open to substantial negotiation. Noah's response came quickly, complete acceptance of the terms with a single additional request: the opportunity to apologize to me in person before Rachel and Ethan relocated. My initial reaction was reflexive refusal. What could a face-to-face apology offer that hadn't been covered in legal documentation or the limited communication we'd maintained for Lily's sake? What purpose would it serve beyond easing his conscience or providing closure he hadn't earned? I brought the question to Dr. Mitchell during our now monthly therapy session, no longer focused on crisis management, but on continued integration and growth. "What do you think he hopes to accomplish?" she asked, her customary approach of exploring motivations rather than prescribing actions. "Absolution, probably," I replied. "Permission to feel better about what he did." "And if that's true, how would you feel about granting that?" I considered the question seriously, examining my emotional response rather than dismissing it. I'm not interested in absolution as a gift to him, but I'm also not invested in his continued suffering as some form of justice. Dr. Mitchell nodded encouragingly. "What about for yourself? Might there be value in such a conversation for your own continued healing?" This perspective shifted my thinking. I'd been viewing Noah's request exclusively in terms of what it offered him, not considering what the exchange might provide for my own journey. Was there something I needed to say or hear that couldn't be communicated through lawyers or limited video interactions? I've moved on in most ways, I reflected. But there are still moments when questions surface, not just about why he did what he did, but about how I didn't see it happening, about what was real and what wasn't in our relationship. "Those are profound questions," Dr. Mitchell acknowledged. "Would addressing them directly serve your continued integration process?" After further reflection, I agreed to Noah's request, with specific conditions: a public location, limited duration, and clear understanding that this was about communication, not reconciliation. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe on a Sunday afternoon, my mother watching Lily to give me space for the conversation. Noah arrived precisely on time, dressed more casually than I remembered, jeans and a simple button-down rather than the business attire he'd favored in Denver. He looked both familiar and strange, recognizable yet altered by the year of separation and the knowledge of his true nature that now colored my perception. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he began after we'd ordered coffee, his discomfort evident in his posture. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, I replied honestly. I'm still not entirely sure why I'm here. I want to apologize, he said, hands wrapped around his coffee cup. Not the legal apology in the settlement or the careful statements during video calls with Lily. A real apology, face to face, for what I did to you. I studied him, noticing subtle changes, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, a watchfulness that had replaced his former confidence. I'm listening. Noah took a deep breath. I am deeply sorry for the deception I maintained throughout our relationship, for creating a false identity, for building a life with you on a foundation of lies, for abandoning you during Lily's birth when you needed me most. He met my eyes directly. There's no justification for what I did. No explanation that makes it acceptable. His words were clearly rehearsed but seemed genuine nonetheless. A prepared statement he wanted to deliver correctly rather than a performance for effect. Why did you do it? I asked, the fundamental question that had lingered despite all the investigation and revelation. Not the logistics of how, but the why. What were you seeking that drove such elaborate deception? Noah considered this, seeming to search for honest insight rather than convenient excuses. I've spent a lot of time in therapy trying to answer that question, he admitted. The simplest answer is also the most difficult to acknowledge. I wanted incompatible things and lacked the courage to choose. Elaborate, I prompted, unwilling to accept this surface-level response. When I met Rachel, I fell in love with her, genuinely, not as pretense. We built a life I valued. Then when Ethan was born, I experienced panic, I suppose. Fear of being trapped in a single identity, a single story. He paused, struggling visibly with articulation. Then I met you, and instead of recognizing those feelings as my own issue to resolve, I created a separate reality where I could be someone else, someone unburdened by the choices I'd already made. You could have left Rachel, I observed, neutrally. Or not pursued me in the first place. Yes, he agreed simply. Those were the honest options I rejected. My therapist calls it pathological conflict avoidance, the inability to accept that meaningful choices necessarily eliminate other possibilities. I wanted everything without the cost of choosing anything. His assessment aligned with my own. Understanding, yet hearing him articulate it carried unexpected impact, confirmation that my experience hadn't been imagined or exaggerated. Did you ever intend to choose? I asked. Or was the plan always to maintain both lives indefinitely? I told myself there would be a resolution eventually, he replied. That I was just waiting for the right time, the right circumstances. But in reality, I was addicted to the dual existence, the rush of successfully managing separate lives, the ego gratification of being central to multiple families. He shook his head, self-disgust evident. It's shameful to admit, but the deception itself became part of the appeal. The cafe bustled around us, ordinary people living ordinary lives, a backdrop that highlighted the extraordinary nature of our conversation. A man confessing to years of calculated deception. A woman seeking understanding from someone who had fundamentally violated her trust. What do you want now, Noah? I asked, the question cutting to the heart of our meeting. From this conversation, from the arrangement we've proposed, from whatever relationship you might have with Lily going forward? He seemed surprised by the directness, but answered without hesitation. I want to be honest, with myself, with my children, with whatever limited role I'm permitted in their lives. I don't expect forgiveness or reconciliation. I don't deserve a central place in Lily's life or yours. I just want the opportunity to be truthful from this point forward, to take responsibility for my actions and their consequences. And with Rachel and Ethan moving to Austin? I'll respect whatever boundaries you both establish, he said firmly. I won't try to manipulate the situation or create conflicts between your approaches. The visitation schedule you've proposed is more than fair, and I'm grateful for it. I studied him, searching for signs of the calculating manipulator I'd uncovered a year ago. What I saw instead was someone diminished but possibly more authentic, a person confronting the reality of his choices rather than constructing elaborate fictions to avoid their consequences. I believe you, I said finally. Not because I trust you, but because I trust myself now to recognize truth from deception. Relief crossed his features, quickly tempered by understanding of the limited nature of this acceptance. That's more than I expected or deserve. As our meeting concluded, neither of us moved to hug or shake hands. Physical contact seemed inappropriate given our history. Instead, we exchanged a look of mutual recognition, acknowledging the complex reality we would continue to navigate, for our children's sake. Walking home afterward, I felt an unexpected lightness, not from forgiveness or closure in the conventional sense, but from confirmation of my own growth. I had faced the architect of my greatest betrayal and remained centered in my truth, neither diminished by lingering anger nor swayed by rehearsed contrition. This was perhaps the most profound new understanding to emerge from the past year. That healing doesn't require forgetting or forgiveness in the traditional sense. It requires integration, the ability to acknowledge pain without being defined by it, to carry forward lessons without remaining trapped in their origin story. That evening, as I bathed Lily and prepared her for bed, I found myself studying her features, Noah's dimples, my eyes, a unique combination that belonged solely to her. She was neither defined by her father's deception nor untouched by it. His genetics and his absence were both part of her story. My job wasn't to erase that complexity, but to help her navigate it with honesty appropriate to her development. "Mama, story," she demanded, settled into her toddler bed with favorite stuffed animals arranged precisely around her. I selected a book from her shelf, a beautifully illustrated tale about different kinds of families, featuring diverse structures from traditional to highly unconventional. It had become a regular part of our bedtime rotation, part of my subtle effort to normalize her particular family constellation. Some families have a mommy and daddy who live together, I read, turning colorful pages. Some families have two mommies or two daddies. Some families have grandparents who take care of children. And some families— I paused at an illustration, showing a complex blended arrangement— are created in special ways, with people who choose to be family even when they live in different houses. Like Ethan, Lily declared, her pronunciation of Ethan's name still developing. Yes, sweetheart, like your brother Ethan, I affirmed, heart full at her simple acceptance of this relationship. And Rachel, and Grandma, and all the people who love you. And Daddy on the computer, she added matter-of-factly, referring to Noah's image during video calls. The comment caught me by surprise. Not that she recognized Noah, but that she had already categorized him in her developing understanding of our family structure. Yes, I agreed gently. Daddy on the computer is part of our family too, in his special way. As Lily drifted to sleep, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here, from shocking discovery to careful investigation, from confrontation to negotiation, from trauma to reconstruction. The path had been neither straight nor easy, but it had led to this moment of peaceful integration, this child secure in her understanding of belonging despite unconventional circumstances. In the living room, I opened my laptop to find an email from Rachel with the subject line, Austin Housing Options. Attached were listings for apartments and small houses near her new workplace, along with notes about nearby parks, preschools, and pediatricians for Ethan. The final attachment was labeled, Guest Room Options, properties with space for Lily and me during our visits. This was the new normal we had created, practical, collaborative co-parenting across what would soon be geographical distance. Not the life I had envisioned when I married Noah, certainly, but one containing unexpected richness born from adversity overcome. I began drafting a response, adding my thoughts about the properties and suggestions for transition planning. As I wrote, I realized I was no longer defining this arrangement in opposition to what should have been, but appreciating it for what it had become. A chosen family constructed from the wreckage of deception, held together not by traditional bonds, but by shared values and deliberate commitment. This was perhaps the most profound new understanding to emerge from the entire experience. That healing doesn't come from returning to what was before trauma, but from creating something meaningful from what remains afterward. Noah's betrayal had shattered the life I thought I was building, but from those fragments, I'd constructed something more authentic. A life based on hard-won wisdom rather than comfortable illusion. As I completed my email to Rachel, adding dates for a weekend visit to Austin to explore neighborhoods together, I felt profound gratitude for this unexpected outcome. Not because the betrayal had been worth it, but because my response to it had revealed strengths I might otherwise never have discovered. The woman who had once gripped hospital bed rails while her husband rushed to another family was still part of me, but no longer defined me. She had become integrated into a more complete self. Someone who recognized Noah's deception not as a reflection of her worth but as a revelation of his character. Someone who had transformed betrayal into wisdom, crisis into opportunity, isolation into community. This was the ultimate new understanding. That while we cannot control what happens to us, we retain the power to determine what meaning we assign to those events, what story we tell about them, and most importantly, what we build in their aftermath. Noah had constructed a life based on deception that ultimately collapsed under its own weight. I had built something entirely different, a life grounded in authenticity that grew stronger with each challenge it integrated. Tomorrow would bring new complexities to navigate: Austin housing arrangements, transition plans for the children, evolving boundaries with Noah. But I would face them as I had faced everything since that life-changing discovery, with clarity, purpose, and the confidence that came from surviving what once seemed unsurvivable. That night, I slept peacefully in the house that was now truly mine alone, no longer haunted by memories of betrayal, but filled instead with evidence of renewal. Lily's toys, my books, artwork chosen for no one's pleasure but my own. The journey from devastation to reconstruction had been long and often painful, but it had led to this place of integrated understanding. Not perfect, not painless, but authentically mine. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.